senators will be debating the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023, which has been lined up for debate for the second reading. The last time the senators debated this bill was on Wednesday, 18th of October 2023. And should the senators dispense of this or complete the debate for the second reading, then that bill will be subjected to a division to determine whether it should proceed to the committee of the whole. The bills which will be debated after that include the Care and Protection of Child Parents Bill, which was debated on Thursday, 16th of November 2023. Of course, there is some balance of time there. After that, the Senate will vote on it to determine whether the bill also proceeds to the committee of the whole. The Prevention of Livestock and Produce Theft Bill. This bill is courtesy of the Honorable Senator from Nandi County, Senator Samson Cherargei. It has also been lined up for debate for the second reading. Actually, that will be a resumption of debate which was interrupted on Thursday, 2nd November 2023. The Coffee Bill will also be debated. The last time this bill was debated was on Thursday, 16th November 2023. There are other bills that have been lined up for debate for the second reading. The Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill. The Tea Amendment Bill. This bill is courtesy of Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei. The County Boundaries Bill, Senate Bills number 6. This is courtesy of the Senator for Homa Bay County, Senator Moses Kajwang. The Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2023, has also been lined up for debate for the second reading. The chairperson, the ad hoc committee, will move a motion on the report of the ad hoc committee to investigate the proliferation of religious organizations and circumstances leading to the more than 95 deaths in Shakahola, Kilifi County. The Senator for Meru County, Senator Kathuri Murungi, will also move a motion on the report of the 146th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union and related meetings held in Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain from 11th to 15th of March 2023.
Chair, order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The majority leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of this Senate today, the 21st of November 2023, being, Mr. Speaker, 1, the National Land Commission Annual Report for financial year 2022-2023, and the Architects and Quantity Surveyors Amendment Bylaws 2023, legal notice number 188 of 2023. I thank you.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Mungatana, your Delegate units seem to be having issues.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, that pursuant, I wish to stand on a point of order stating that pursuant to Standing Order number 37, the Senate do now adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the prevailing heavy rain and subsequent flooding in many parts of the country. Mr. Speaker, I request, thank you.
Honorable Senators, indeed I'm satisfied that the requisite threshold has been met. Therefore, direct that this matter be discussed at 5:30. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Senator John Methu, there was a statement pursuant to Standing Order 53-1. That statement is dropped. There are two for Senator John Methu. Senator Raphael Chimera. Yes, Senator, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request for a statement on adherence to the principles of meritocracy, transparency, fairness, and equal opportunity in recruitments at the Competition Authority of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity, and Regional Integration regarding the adherence to the principles of meritocracy, transparency, fairness, and equal opportunity in recruitments at the Competition Authority of Kenya, in brackets CAK, particularly in the recruitment of the Director General of the authority. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, explain the recruitment process for the Director General position at CAK, outlining the steps taken so far in the recruitment of the DG and the corresponding timelines. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, disclose details of the tendering process for the procurement of the recruitment services for the DG position, explaining the rationale for the award of the tender to ACAL Consulting. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, reports on the fairness of the recruitment process, explaining the failure of the authority to provide feedback to candidates, as well as publish the long lists and short lists. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, confirm claims of conflict of interest, secrecy or bias in the recruitment process, and if so, remedial action taken. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, clarify whether the Public Service Commission is actively monitoring the recruitment process to ensure it aligns with the principles of meritocracy, transparency, fairness, and equal opportunity, and outline measures to ensure that the recruitment process is conducted in a transparent and fair manner and is insulated from undue influence. I also have another statement, Mr. Speaker. Request for statement on the withheld functions and financial challenges of the National Cancer Institute, Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the withheld functions and financial challenges of the National Cancer Institute, NCI, Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state the challenges, if any, experienced by the national government in the implementation of the Cancer Prevention and Control Act number 15 of 2012, specifically relating to the functions and responsibilities of the National Cancer Institute, NCI, Kenya. Number 2, state measures put in place by the government to ensure that the NCI Kenya effectively executes its mandate, including the restoration of its regulatory and oversight functions, outlining the specific functions that have been withheld and the rationale for such actions. Number 3, spell out actions being taken to address the financial challenges faced by the NCI Kenya, and that it operates with and ensure that it operates with the intended financial autonomy, And lastly, Mr. Speaker, indicate the steps being taken to strengthen the collaboration between the Ministry of Health and the NCI Kenya to enhance cancer prevention and control efforts in the country. Last statement, Mr. Speaker, is a request for a statement on delay in processing of medical insurance claims for teachers and police officers by Medical Administrators Kenya Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the undue delay in processing of medical insurance claims for teachers and police officers by the Medical Administrators Kenya Limited, MAKL. In the statement, the committee should, number one, provide details of the medical insurance schemes for teachers and police officers managed by Medical Administrators Kenya Limited, MAKL, indicating the number of respective beneficiaries and panels of medical and healthcare service providers. Number two, Mr. Speaker, reports on the criteria for processing claims at MAKL, explaining the delays reported by teachers and police officers in the processing of medical insurance claims. Number three, Mr. Speaker, explain actions taken by the Insurance Regulatory Authority, the Teachers Service Commission, and the National Police Service Commission to address the said delays. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, outline measures put in place to ensure the timely and efficient processing of medical insurance claims in line with the terms and conditions of the respective schemes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shakila Abdallah. That statement is dropped. Senator Hamida Kibwana. That statement is dropped. In fact, Senator Hamida Kibwana had two statements. Those two statements are hereby dropped for reasons that she is not present. Next order, clerk.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on the application for conferment of city status to the municipality of Eldoret Division.
So this motion is up for division, and clearly we do not have numbers to undertake a division, and therefore this motion shall be deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 9, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023, division.
This motion, this particular bill is also up for division. Unfortunately, we do not have the numbers to carry out a division, and therefore this bill will be deferred. Next order.
Order number 10, the Care and Protection of Child Parents Bill, Senate Bills number 29 of 2023, division.
This particular bill is also up for division. Noting that we don't have the numbers to carry that division, this order will also be deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 11, the Prevention of Livestock and Produce Theft Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2023, second reading.
Now, at interruption of debate on Thursday, Senator Chute had the floor, and he had a balance of 5 minutes. So, Senator Chute, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I can cede my time to anybody who wants to speak.
Thank you. Senator Wafula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Unfortunately, I was testing whether my buttons are working. Thank you. I can also hand over to the next person.
Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Nimebonyeza nikiwa na uhaki nitaongea, na nashukuru Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Na mswada huu Bwana Spika kuhusu wizi wa mifugo na kuzuia wizi wa mifugo Bwana Spika. Ni kweli Bwana Spika, mswada huu ambao umeletwa na Senator Cherargei ni mswada ambao unafaa zaidi Bwana Spika wakati huu, kwa sababu Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu nyingi za nchi ya Kenya, hasa upande wa bonde la Ufa Bwana Spika, utembee sehemu hizo, utapata shida nyingi ambao wananchi wanapitia Bwana Spika, ni huu wizi wa mifugo Bwana Spika. Na wizi wa mifugo Bwana Spika ni jambo ambalo limekuwa likisumbua kwa miaka na mikaka Bwana Spika. Na Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu nyingi za Laikipia, hasa wale ambao ni wafugaji, utapata ya kwamba wao wanategemea ile mifugo Bwana Spika. Mifugo ndio wanategemea kwa watoto wao waweze kwenda shule Bwana Spika. Wanategemea mifugo ile Bwana Spika kama ndio tegemeo lao Bwana Spika kwa maisha yao Bwana Spika. Lakini imekuwa ni kitu ambacho inafanya wao wenyewe Bwana Spika wauawe. Ukitembea sana Bwana Spika sehemu za mahali kunaitwa Wangwashe Bwana Spika, uende mahali kunaitwa Ormora Bwana Spika, mahali kunaitwa Matuku Bwana Spika, watu wengi Bwana Spika wamepoteza maisha yao kwa sababu ya wizi huu wa mifugo. Na Bwana Spika, huu si wizi wa mifugo ule wa kawaida Bwana Spika, kwa sababu wizi wa mifugo wa kitambo Bwana Spika ulikuwa watu wakishambuliwa na mifugo inachukuliwa, lakini wakati huu Bwana Spika wanashambulia kuwaua watu Bwana Spika, na baada ya kuwaua watu Bwana Spika, unaona huendi ile mifugo inaenda mahali fulani kuchungwa Bwana Spika. Ile mifugo inaibiwa, inaletwa katika miji mikuu, na si wizi wa kawaida ambao uliibwa na walala hoi Bwana Spika. Wizi huu wa mifugo ambao unaendelezwa Bwana Spika, na ndiposa naunga mswada huu mkono, kwa sababu unasema ya kwamba mswada huu unasema wizi wa mifugo utakuwa ukiwekwa katika kipengele kile ambacho wale ambao wamehusika na huu wizi wa mifugo na kupatikana na hii mifugo Bwana Spika, wawe wakichukuliwa hatua dhabiti Bwana Spika za kisheria. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, naunga mkono mswada huu nikisema ya kwamba si wizi wa mifugo peke yake Bwana Spika, kwa sababu pengine unapata yule ambaye ako na wale mifugo ndio anachukuliwa hatua za kisheria Bwana Spika. Hata wafanyi biashara ambao wamehusika na wizi huu, kwa sababu wao ndio wanapelekea vijana wetu kutoenda shule, ndio waweze kujihusisha na wizi huu wa mifugo Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nikiunga mkono, ningesema ya kwamba sio wale tu wahusika wadogo wanapaswa kuwa kichukuliwa hatua, wale waliokuja kuiba hii mifugo usiku, lakini hata wale ambao wamepelekea hii mifugo Bwana Spika na kuweza kuendeleza hii biashara, kwa sababu biashara hii ya mifugo wa wizi ikisimamishwa Bwana Spika, hata wezi wale rejareja Bwana Spika, wale wanakuja kufungulia mifugo ya watu Bwana Spika, wataweza kukoma Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, sisi hasa watu wa Laikipia shida hii, na ndiposa naunga mswada huu mkono. Mswada huu ukipita, wizi wa mifugo utakuwa ni jambo la sahau la kwetu Laikipia, na najua maendeleo mengi yataweza kupatikana Bwana Spika. Naunga mkono mswada huu, na anasema Bwana Spika upite haraka iwezekanavyo Bwana Spika, na anasema asante kwa kunipa fursa hii. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Dulo, what is your intervention? Proceed to speak then.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, over the years in Parliament, we have really tried to come up with bills that can support the issues of cattle rustling and banditry in this country. But unfortunately, we have never seen any of those bills seeing the light of the day. I remember 2013, Senator Naisula brought a bill that was going to take care of that, and more so the issues between the pastoralist and also agriculturalist. But unfortunately, even that bill, it has never gone through. Mr. Speaker, I must confess that issues of pastoralism and livestock and banditry in this country, it's not being taken very seriously. And there are so many of Kenyans who rely on issues of pastoralism and issues of livestock. But you will see, Mr. Speaker, most of the time, even when people are looking at the budget and the policy, the issue of livestock, the issue of pastoralism becomes a second thought issue. Mr. Speaker, it's high time that we deal with the issues of banditry and livestock. Mr. Speaker, looking at the bill, the issues of branding of the animals has been introduced. If you look at the issues of branding, some of us who are pastoralists, every community, clan or sub-clan, they have their branding traditionally. So that if my animal is being taken by somebody, automatically I have a particular branding because I come from a certain community. But over the years, Mr. Speaker, that has not actually assisted. Mr. Speaker, issues of banditry and cattle rustling, it used to be a traditional issues where certain communities feel that when they actually go through a certain process, they should actually go and steal animals so that they become heroes and they get actually married or use the same resources to marry. Mr. Speaker, that has completely changed. Cattle rustling and banditry of animals has actually become a business where you can imagine people, for example, I have an issue with Isiolo County where our pastoralists are being attacked by Samburu County, Marsabit County, Garissa County, Wajir County. Isiolo has become a punching bag and we are boxed in a corner. Mr. Speaker, we have even tried to use provincial administration. I remember one time a former PC, Swale, was taken to Garissa to deal with the issues of banditry and cattle rustling. Mr. Swale actually tried to make sure that whichever chief will be found that animals are stolen from his area, he is actually removed from the service. And that particular time, Mr. Speaker, that really worked. Mr. Speaker, when these groups of bandits or youths come together, it's an organized crime where people sit and they have actually arrangement to make sure they go and hit a particular area. Mr. Speaker, in those areas, the chiefs are there, the elders are there, the security is there, the provincial administration is there. Unfortunately, when those animals are taken, nobody will see them. I remember 2 weeks ago, we have lost almost 500 goats in Isiolo County. Immediately it leaves the boundary, those goats are divided within certain villages. You will not even see where it has gone. Mr. Speaker, these bandits, we have tried the issue of NPR in this country, which has never worked. Because if security, for example, police or provincial administrations are the ones following these animals, over the years we are unable to get those animals back. Then we say, can we use NPR so that they can complement actually the normal regular police and the provincial administration? Even that has never worked. And I think, Mr. Speaker, as a country we have to take this very seriously because for pastoralists, this is source of livelihood. Today you have 1,000 animals, tomorrow you have 0, you are reduced to nothing. And sometimes you will even sell these animals to take your kids to school. After these animals are taken, what do you do with your children? How do you feel as a person who was having 1,000 camels, tomorrow they are all taken away? Mr. Speaker, I support this particular bill if it is for any reason that we are going to have a solution as far as banditry and cattle rustling is concerned. I remember even many years back, we even introduced the issue of chip that is going to be put in the animals. Even that, it never worked because it's very expensive. We are not going to be able to introduce that. Mr. Speaker, as pastoralists, we have a big problem in this country. During rainy season, we have a problem. During drought, we have a problem. And also, during drought, people fight because of pasture. People fight because of, water. Yeah? Fighting over resources. No solution in this country that we ever get. Mr. Speaker, we are really affected as pastoralists with the issue of this issue of cattle rustling. We must have a solution to it. And if for any reason this is going to actually change the current situation of the issue of cattle rustling and banditry, I think we will support that. But I feel that as a country we are being neglected by the government and all the government representatives as far as issues of pastoralism and the cattle rustling is concerned. Mr. Speaker, recently we had a lot of rains. You can imagine animals crossing, all of them are swept by the rivers. Yeah? Today you are rich, tomorrow you are nobody. Water harvesting that should have happened right now to actually alleviate the problem of drought is not even happening anywhere in our counties. Rainy season, you will see that the rivers are killing people. Houses are swept. As a country, we don't even prioritize to harvest that water so that tomorrow the pastoralists, the people who have cattle can be able to survive on those dams or water from the river. Mr. Speaker, I support this particular bill, but I think as a country we must have a candid discussion as far as issues of cattle rustling is concerned in this country. I know CS Kindiki has tried. In fact, he has traversed this country from the day he was appointed. It has slowly come down, but unfortunately, up to now, even last week in my county, animals are actually being taken away, which is very sad. We have security, we have government in place, we have chiefs. There is no solution at all. I think personally I feel maybe we need to introduce a curriculum where we say that banditry should be dealt with. I know there is a bill before our committee by County Assembly of Elgeyo Marakwet. We visited them 2 weeks ago, where they are saying that the issue of cattle rustling and banditry, it should be actually subjected to as a terror act. Mr. Speaker, we must support that as pastoralists, because we are not getting solution to this issue of cattle rustling and banditry. We are really pained as pastoralists because there is no solution. Mr. Speaker, if anything happens in agricultural area, you will see people running, having solution in this country. But when it comes to pastoralists and the cattle rustling and the nomads, no solution at all. I think we need to put our heads together and come up with a solution as far as issues of cattle rustling and banditry is concerned in this country. Because initially we thought maybe banditry is being brought into this country by Al-Shabaab and other people. But now it's not even Al-Shabaab. It's our own people doing the same thing. We know each other. But unfortunately, sometimes even those who are doing the same thing, we protect them. I remember we are being told an incident in Elgeyo Marakwet where they are saying a bandit was actually attacked and he was brought to the hospital. Can you imagine people coming to release that particular individual who has committed a crime, who has killed somebody? People go to the hospital to release him. I mean, it's unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. So I think personally I support the bill, but we must get a solution to this problem of cattle rustling in this country. I thank you.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the intention and the objective of this bill, proposes a law that will enable the branding of livestock. Mr. Speaker, the intention therefore is for identification of the livestock, so that if they are stolen, it is possible to be identified this livestock belongs to which county, which constituency, and so on. And the intention, Mr. Speaker, is to help the security agencies and government to facilitate recovery of livestock and identify the owners of those livestock, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this is the culmination of the situation that has been faced by the pastoral communities for a very long time. And, Mr. Speaker, this bill is an attempt by Senator Cherargei in this House, Mr. Speaker, to look for ways and means of reducing the so-called cat rustling and banditry, Mr. Speaker, because therefore it is easily to track the stolen livestock. Mr. Speaker, in 1977, when I was in primary school, the first attack took place in Baringo North, in my own village, Mr. Speaker. That time, the President of the Republic, Mr. Speaker, was the first President of the Republic, Mzee Kenyatta. 1 year later, Mr. Speaker, the late President Moi took over from Baringo as the head of state. And for 24 years, Mr. Speaker, this situation of cat rustling continued despite the efforts being taken by government. Mr. Speaker, it is sad again that 10 years of Kibaki, we had the same challenge. In Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, in Turkana, in Isholo, in Marsabit, and the other counties, Mr. Speaker. The son of the first president came on board for 10 years, Uhuru Kenyatta. The situation never changed, Mr. Speaker. And now the 50th president of the Republic, William Samuel Ruto, and the situation continues. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, in this House, there is a motion by me seeking this House to pass a resolution to declare cat rustling a national disaster and an establishment of a fund to compensate the victims. Mr. Speaker, the unfortunate situation is that it is only the pastoral people who feel the pinch. But the rest of the country, where there is plenty, where there is food, where there is communication, where they don't feel what it means. Mr. Speaker, recently, a colleague of mine asked me, Cheptumo, how possible is it that you can drive 300 heads of cattle? Is it possible to steal 300 cows, heads of cattle? 1,000? And I don't blame that Kenyan, because practically speaking, it is not tenable. You can't imagine how possible it is. But, Mr. Speaker, from where I come from, you can have one Kenyan having 100 herds of cattle, 200 goats, a millionaire by standards. And when the raiders, Mr. Speaker, come, they drive the entire livestock. A millionaire, in terms of value of livestock, becomes a pauper, poor one morning, not able to pay fees, dress, have food for the family. Mr. Speaker, this is a challenge that I want to really say that we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, a situation that has persisted for 49 years, almost the age of our independence, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, it has caused a lot of havoc, My name is here. I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, the challenges is facing Turkana. My member of my committee, Dulo there, wherever we are in meetings in our committee, he keeps on crying because of the situation and so on. Mr. Speaker, you talk of displacement of population. You talk of maiming of people. You talk of killings of people. You have widows. You have widowers. Mr. Speaker, institutions of learning, people are unable to exercise and benefit from Article 43, political, economic, and social rights, Mr. Speaker, are completely denied these people. So, Mr. Speaker, any attempt by any Kenyan and by a member of this House to introduce any law or a proposal, Mr. Speaker, that we think can help to sort out the cat wrestling, Mr. Speaker, I want to say we will receive and support. Mr. Speaker, I want to request members of this House to support this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, we have so many social challenges in our counties. Baringo, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to say that, is one of the counties, Mr. Speaker, that has suffered. 3 days ago, 3 young Kenyans were killed by the bandits, innocent people who were just looking after their livestock. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say from this House that, Mr. Speaker, the way the post-election violence, Mr. Speaker, of 2007, 2008, Kenyans paid to compensate the victims of post-election violence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the cattle rustling, which used to be a traditional kind of situation, is no longer. It is becoming a commercial business. It is becoming political, Mr. Speaker. And it is the right time now, Mr. Speaker, that we pass every law that will enable government, Mr. Speaker, to take stand action. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, when I led my committee to Elgeyo Marakwet, as said by my colleague Dulo here, one of the recommendations, Mr. Speaker, one of the petitions which is in this House, and I will be tabling the report next week, Mr. Speaker, the Elgeyo Marakwet County Assembly is proposing, Mr. Speaker, that we amend the law so that we treat a bandit as a terrorist. And Mr. Speaker, I agree. What the actions of a terrorist and the actions of a bandit is the same. They destroy, they kill, Mr. Speaker. They maim, they steal. What happened in 1998, Mr. Speaker, in the US Embassy here, the bomb blast, is exactly what a bandit is doing. The other day, Mr. Speaker, in Westgate, the same situation. In Dusit, the same situation. Kenyans are dying in numbers the way they also die. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will be moving a motion in this House to amend our laws so that the punishment of a bandit should be at the level of a punishment of a terrorist. So that, Mr. Speaker, we deal with these criminals in a manner that is going to be deterrent, Mr. Speaker, and facilitate, our people to live in peace. Mr. Speaker, I just want to join my colleagues in supporting this bill and say we pass this bill so that, Mr. Speaker, then the government should be able to allocate resources and do the branding of the livestock so that they are able to be tracked and be returned to the people, the owners of the livestock, Mr. Speaker. I want to conclude by saying, Mr. Speaker, I repeat, it is the business of the government of today, and I want to thank the President, Mr. Speaker, because from the time he took over, he has given the political will, he has made it clear that he will do everything possible to ensure we restore and secure our country, Mr. Speaker, and particularly the counties that have been facing cattle rustling for a very long time. Mr. Speaker, it means that we have to provide enough personnel, sophisticated equipments. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you something, as I tell the House. Sometimes the security forces of this country can actually not face these bandits because the weapons they have, Mr. Speaker, are more sophisticated than the weapons that are being used by our forces. It is a shocking trend, Mr. Speaker. I want to call upon the government of the Republic that it is the responsibility of the government of the day, the Kenya Kwanza government, as per our plan to secure all our counties, Baringo, my county, being one of them, so that, Mr. Speaker, then we develop and continue to enjoy the fruits of our independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also make a contribution to this bill. From the start, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Cheragei for thinking through such an important bill, especially to take care of the interests of livestock farmers. Mr. Speaker, in supporting this bill, I will limit my comments to part 1, 2, and 3, and I will begin the short title. The Speaker, the bill is titled the Prevention of Livestock and Produce Theft Bill. I'm thinking that the Senator and the drafters wanted to capture the live animals and products from livestock. And so, the Speaker, I will be requesting the Senator to consider amending the short title to read the Prevention of Livestock and Livestock Products Theft Bill. So that then he captures, because when you read the introduction, the object of the bill, it dwells a lot on live animals, makes mention of firearms, but omits a very critical product from livestock, skins and hides. And you know our the leather industry in this country, basically more than 80% of it is from livestock. So just to consider expanding the scope of the short title to include the livestock products. The Speaker, the branding of animals a very important aspect. And the Speaker, I wish the Senator would have thought about putting in place or enforcing the formation and activation of livestock ranching societies. Because that way, Mr. Speaker, it becomes a lot easier and neater to establish clear identifiers for specific ranches, as opposed to in one household you have 10 owners of livestock in the same household. Each one of them is supposed to come with a different brand for their animals for identification. The Speaker, it would be a lot easier if this could be done through ranching societies. And this has happened before, Mr. Speaker. Where I come from in Kitui, and Kitui actually is one of the leading counties when it comes to establishment of ranches, cattle ranches. We used to have two very vibrant cattle ranches in Kitui West. One was called the B2, Yata B2, and the other one was called Mwakine Ranch. And in those ranches, owners would just take their livestock, but they would come up with their own unique identifiers for their animals. I remember my grandfather's identifier was number 1, 2, 3. And so everybody in the family would brand their animals 1, 2, 3, but they would know that they have a specific identifier for their specific animals within the larger family identification. The Speaker, on the same part 2 on branding, I see the Senator is proposing that in clause 6, every livestock owner shall apply to the county executive committee member for registration in their name of a brand, of such nature and dimensions that shall be prescribed in county legislation. So, Speaker, I would urge and request the promoter of the bill to remove the burden of the requirement for registration from the livestock owner and put that burden on the county government. So it becomes the responsibility of the executive member responsible for agriculture and livestock in each county to ensure that all animals in the county are branded and they can be easily identified. Clause 6C, the Speaker, the requirement for registration of the brand, under C, there is a fee that is required of every livestock owner who applies for a brand. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of livestock owners who really would not afford a fee to register a brand. I'm thinking of the peasant farmers in Kitui who have, say, 1 or 2 goats. And, you know, according to this law that we are passing, it becomes a crime to own an animal which does not have a registered brand. So that farmer who has only 2 goats, or even 1 goat, how are they supposed then to apply and register a brand for their 1 goat? And if they don't do that, then they will lose the goat or the fine. Actually, the fine in part 4 of the bill is extremely punitive. If you are the owner of this 1 goat and you have not registered the brand for it, then you are in breach of the law, and according to this bill, you should be imprisoned for a term not exceeding 1 year or to a fine not exceeding 100,000 shillings. The Speaker, I know Senator Cherargei minds the interests of the people he calls hustlers. You should reconsider tightening that section of the bill, so you don't make poverty an offense. You know, it's not a crime to be poor. Let that person who has 1 goat, you know, have time to multiply the goats to get to 10, so to see how he can tighten that part. The Speaker, part 3, because I know other senators would also want to make a contribution to this bill. Part 3 is the Speaker of this bill. It talks about the movement of livestock. A very interesting section of the bill. First of all, it begins by introducing an officer called an inspector. And this inspector, according to this bill, one of the major duties and responsibilities of the inspector is to ensure that permits are issued for the movement of livestock from the premises of the owner to any other place, either for slaughter or to the market. A good thing to do. But then Senator Cherargei will also remember that function, Mr. Speaker, is currently being undertaken by the Ministry of Agriculture, and there is a requirement today that before you move animals, especially from one county to another county, you must obtain a no objection letter from the recipient county. So then the promoter of the bill will need to harmonize that role of the inspector and the ministry official who is issuing the no objection letter. But Mr. Speaker, what has caught my attention in this bill, in that provision, is that then, if this bill goes through, and I pray that it does, then perhaps the problems that I have been facing in Kitui of camel herders who invade our land, then could be a problem of the past. Because according to this bill, then there is no camel herder who will be allowed to move their animals from the premises of the owner into my farms in Kitui without the express permission of the inspector, both in, say, if it's Garissa or Wajir, and my inspector in Kitui or Taveta or another place that we have this menace. The Speaker, the beauty of that is that this permit will also enable us to unveil the shadowy owners of these camels. In most cases, Mr. Speaker, you never know who the owners of these animals are. But now this permit requires that the name of the owner is entered into the permit and the handler is also entered into the permit. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to say and echo the words of Senator Cheptumo on the matter of the treatment of this menace that is called cattle rustling. Mr. Speaker, I have never understood in my entire life
Order.
why
Senator Shakila and your colleagues, Senator Mazayo, Senator Boy and Senator Hamida. You may consult, but keep your voices low, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for protecting me from the coast region. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have never understood why we should tag an obvious open crime and baptize it cattle rustling. The Speaker, a thief is a thief. Whether you are stealing mangoes in plantations in Kitui or you are stealing livestock from the rift or wherever you are stealing. And I want to really thank Cherage for thinking through this and for proposing in the bill that those people that are caught stealing animals or handling stolen animals through this menace that they call cattle rustling will be liable on conviction to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 15 years or to a fine not exceeding 1 million shillings or to both fine and imprisonment. So Speaker, that's the way to go. So that it must become very, very expensive for people to engage in cattle rustling in the 21st century. So Speaker, with those few remarks and those recommendations for amendments, I support the bill.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me in a very special and profound manner to take this opportunity to congratulate and commend Senator Cherage for this very wonderful bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say, may the record reflect that I am in support of this bill. Mr. Speaker, I come from a county known as Kwale, and Senator Issa Boy is present in this house today. He may bear me witness that there's a saying in my local dialect that says, Mduruma etse ng'ombe si Mduruma, loosely translated to mean that a Duruma who does not own cows or a cow is not a proper Duruma, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the county government of Kwale County has for a very long time, since the times of the reign of C.S. Salim Vuria, been investing in the promotion and distribution of very good breeds of livestock in Kwale County, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, we have, as a county, out of the expenditure of taxpayers' money end up losing this kind of breed out of cattle rustling and banditry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are communities in a place called Namelok in Kwale County, a place called Naseria in Kwale County, a place called Mtumwa, where I come from, Mr. Speaker, Majongani and Mtunga, Mr. Speaker, and other parts of Kwale County, where most people in that county, Mr. Speaker, are basically livestock farmers, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, out of that basic thing of them keeping livestock, there's been a huge source of agony, Mr. Speaker, and pain, Mr. Speaker, because we've had for far too long a conflict of communities out of keeping livestock, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to speak to section 5, Mr. Speaker, 5E, where we have the functions of the CCs, respective CCs in charge of agriculture. And that function specifically speaks about promotion of abandonment of livestock theft, Mr. Speaker, through the sensitization of the communities to at least adopt alternative source of living, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is a very crucial point because there has to be a conversation somewhere. We must begin by telling our people that life is not all about just keeping cows, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I am not practicing law, when I am not serving the great people of Kwale County and the nation at large, Mr. Speaker, I run a small butchery in Kwale Town, Mr. Speaker, and Diani Town for that matter, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes when I have the time to go and take stock of the meat and the beef that I sell in my small butchery, Mr. Speaker, you are faced with the chances of going to source for cows, Mr. Speaker. And when you find yourself at the slaughterhouse, Mr. Speaker, there are no records at all, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most of us who are in the business of selling meat, buying and selling meat, Mr. Speaker, end up in trouble because we don't have records at the point of sale and at the point of order, Mr. Speaker. That is the battle. And I'm happy Section 14 of this bill, as proposed by Senator Agei, cures that mission, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude my remarks, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that in a nutshell, that part 3 of that bill, Mr. Speaker, on the movement of livestock, Mr. Speaker. And I want to really agree with Senator Enoch Wambua from Kitui. That introduction of an inspector, Mr. Speaker, and the mere fact that you require a permit to move animals from one point to another, Mr. Speaker, might be a heavy burden to those of us who are livestock farmers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a farmer could only have 5 cows, for instance, and he wants to move them to a place with greener pasture, Mr. Speaker. Are you telling us today that I must apply for a permit? Are we creating an office called the inspector who will end up just being a toll station, Mr. Speaker, for just mere movement of animals from one point to another point, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I also want to appeal to those CECs whom I've seen they've been given enormous powers insofar as this bill is concerned. My appeal is that please, under Section 5, please, as you seek to exercise the powers given by you by this bill, exercise those powers judiciously, in a very fair manner, in a very transparent manner, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm also impressed that the same bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to have a framework that seeks to regulate how we brand our animals, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we've been doing it, though in a very traditional manner, Mr. Speaker, but where I come from, there's something we call kupiga mola, which is as good as just branding the same, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge Senator Cherargei to just think through it very well. I appreciate the thought into this bill, Mr. Speaker. It's a very well thought out bill, but I know much more can be done. Another day, Mr. Speaker, we need to start from somewhere. And the progress and the steps that we take as a nation towards combating cattle rustling and banditry, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say, begin from this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. On those many and very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say support, and once more, let me congratulate Senator Cherargei for this particular bill. I support you, and I urge this entire House, Mr. Speaker, to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to begin by saying that whereas I support the general idea of dealing with the problem of cattle rustling, my brother, the senator from Nandi, will have to do a bit more in convincing me whether we are not replicating laws that are already in existence on our books. Mr. Speaker, I have a few concerns about the bill, and fortunately or unfortunately, last week I was not able to participate in an important debate about the deployment of police officers to Haiti. Mr. Speaker, had I gotten that opportunity, in fact, one of the issues that we wanted to address was the adequacy of our own security forces to deal with the security problems and challenges in this country. I personally believe that the question of cattle rustling is a security problem, and that because the Constitution of this Republic places the responsibility of ensuring the security of all wananchi and their belongings and property on the national government, I think any legislation that is directed against addressing a security matter must be alive to that demarcation between the national government roles and the county government roles. I have perused through the bill, Mr. Speaker. I am afraid that we might be saddling the county governments with the responsibility that is essentially the responsibility of the national government. We have been promised by the current regime that in fact they are going to rout out the problem of cattle rustling, especially in the North Rift. I think there's been an operation that has been ongoing, if I'm not wrong, for the past 6 months or something. And Mr. Speaker, that is what we expect from the national government to be able to root out the problem. So that if I were here when that debate was being had, I would have argued that in fact, if you look at the ratio of police officers to the population in this country, and you compare it with the recommended ratio of police officers to the population by the United Nations, Mr. Speaker, we are lagging behind. We simply do not have the resources. And I would want that the national government focuses on ensuring there is enough security resources in areas that are prone to cattle rustling in order to deal with the problem. Mr. Speaker, if you look at some of the provisions in the Act, and I want to thank Senator Wambua because he has addressed, first of all, the requirement of registration of a brand. I would support him, Mr. Speaker, and Senator Cherargei, I hope you are persuaded, that that responsibility should not be transferred to the hustler farmer, somebody who has one goat, one cow, to come up with a brand for his cows and then have to register it. Let the county governments be the ones responsible for the registration of those brands. And I know Kenyans are creative, but Mr. Speaker, it's going to be an onerous task for every single farmer in this country to come up with a unique identifier for all his cattle. Mr. Speaker, then the question of fees. You know, for me, I am very sensitive these days. It appears like we are looking for every single excuse to levy new taxes and levies on Kenyans. Even registering a goat now, Mr. Speaker, the Act provides that the farmer, that small farmer who has one cow, has to pay a fee. Why can this thing be a government service, Honorable Cherargei, if we convince you? Because if you look at the cumulative burden that has been put on the shoulders of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, some of these things, I don't think we are getting to a breaking point. I'm just happy that Senator Cherargei in his bill has spared chicken farmers, that we will not have to register our chicken. Let those ones who have cows fight this battle, but we will fight this battle for them. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I believe that, or I suspect, that there could be some replication of already existing laws. Senator Cherargei luckily is a lawyer like me. He understands that, for instance, the offense that has been created under Section 18, the proposed Section 18 of this Act, which is essentially theft of livestock, already exists on the penal code. Mr. Speaker, the definition of theft under the penal code is wide enough to include anything capable of being stolen, so that it is cows, it is money, it is anything that is capable of being stolen. I do not know, or would like to be convinced, whether creating a specific law on livestock is the right thing to do in light of the fact that this law already exists. The same thing, Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 18, subsection 2, it creates what is essentially a mirror of the existing laws on robbery with violence. That if you steal anything and that particular moment of theft, you are armed with an offensive weapon or use a threat of force, it automatically graduates the crime from a simple crime into a capital crime. So that, Mr. Speaker, that would be a problem. The same goes to Section 19, There's already an existing law on trespass. Senator Cherargei is aware of the law. And then, Mr. Speaker, my greatest problem is Section 34. And I wish on this particular section, Mr. Speaker, that we go together, because I believe that the Constitution is clear in assigning jurisdiction over certain crimes, the jurisdiction of the courts over certain crimes. I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that capital punishment ordinarily are things that are dealt with by the High Court. So that if you say that it is a capital offense for which you are liable to be jailed for life, to steal an animal whilst armed, or to commit violence in the course of the crime, and then you say, Honorable Speaker, that offenses under this act or under any rules made thereunder shall be tried by any subordinate court, I believe that you will be interfering with the various jurisdictions of the courts as laid out in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I also have a concern that we might be creating unnecessary libraries for documentation that would be rendered immediately unusable after a few minutes or a few weeks. So we are required to register a brand, then you are given a certificate for that brand. If you move animals, you require another document. If you take it to an abattoir, you require another document. There is just too much documentation, and all this surely cannot be placed on the shoulders of ordinary farmers. So for me, really, I still implore this House to be persuaded that it is the responsibility of national government to secure the lives and property of Kenyans. And let us not push legislation that would appear to shift that burden either to the mwananchi or, in fact, Mr. Speaker, to the county governments, where the commensurate resources will not follow. Because we would expect then that some of these things, because it is a responsibility of the national government, if indeed they are going to be the responsibility of county governments, then the resources for that work needs to be devolved as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree generally with the spirit of the bill, but I would urge the proponent of the bill to please consider some of those concerns. They are concerns that are genuine. They are from a place of love, if I can say that on the floor of the House without running the risk of kicking myself out again, Mr. Speaker. So please, let's consider this so that we come up with legislation that is helpful to the country, but not to excuse the national government from its responsibility to secure both the lives and property of Kenyans. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to to support the bill. This is a very important bill. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, this country, 70% is actually arid and semi-arid. And the most useful purpose that we can use for that land is livestock keeping and production of livestock. However, as a result of neglect from successful government, much development has not been done, and therefore, most of the times, pastoralists lose their animals as a result of intermittent droughts, and they're left to blame for themselves without any intervention from anybody else, or even the government that owns those animals, actually. Two, livestock theft is actually a menace, and many Kenyans, and especially pastoralists, in the proper stage, that somebody owns today almost 1,000 head of cattle or camels or the shots, but those animals have been raided by people who have well armed from different corners. Actually, most of these thefts goes up to even the cross borders. It goes neighborhood to Tanzania, Somalia, Southern Sudan, all these things. The neighborhood pastoralists, warlike people, most of them own guns. Actually, it's not even controlled. In places like Somalia and Ethiopia, the guns, like Ethiopia, the guns are legalized, and everybody owns a gun. But unfortunately, Kenyans are not armed. What they own is only, something illegal, and most of the times they're under threat. And therefore, they always become the weaker side of, they cannot defend themselves. And this has now led many Kenyans to lose their livestock. I think it's a high time that people don't be, I mean, the borders are very porous. Borders, once animals cross the border, you hardly get them. And even if you get, you only get one or two. It's not only in the pastoral areas, Honorable Speaker. Even those animals, those people who have the agro-pastoralist within the highlands, they use the animals very frequently than most of the people don't believe it. Yesterday, actually, my driver was telling me that he lost cattle that they were stolen from Boma. So it has become a very common thing. What happens is that these animals are stolen and slaughtered at night. It goes to the butcher and you will not find them. The hide is hidden or is taken into one of the hardest places where they sell these things or tanneries. So it's not very easy to get these animals. One other thing, Honorable Speaker, as a result of poverty and customary laws, you see, when a young man who owns camels or cattle and that have been stolen, and then he wants to marry, he's being told that you must bring up to 100 cows, 50 camels, and then that guy has no way to, he will not be able to get it. So, the only option he has for him to marry is actually to go and steal and raid. And that's why we're seeing the cattle rustling can never be stopped. Because there are no good policies in place. There is no any policy to sustain the livelihoods of pastoralists. And as when they lose the animals, Honorable Speaker, you see, when the maize farmer goes at a loss, maybe the glut production, they overproduce. Maybe at that time there's a drought, they have not enough maize. The government has interventions that have been put in place. There's a fund for what? When the coffee farmers have glut production, the coffee price goes down, there's a safety measure. But the livestock sector, which cares for almost 15 million people here in this country, has no security, has no safety measures been undertaken. There is no way they can be able to be saved. They thrive on their own, they do on their own. There is no government intervention that says today that there's a drought, that they lose almost 90% of the animals. There is no system of restocking it. They live in poverty. So this is actually what's forced them to go and steal. So if there was a proper policy or law that, like any other crop production, any other crop farmers, if there's compensation, you see, even the other time when there was Somalia stopped taking Mira, the government gave them 1 billion shekels. But we last time the drought, we lost 1 million, almost a billion animals, 100 million animals. There was no compensation, as Honorable Speaker. I think it is also a policy issue that actually discriminates the livestock producers. One other thing is, Honorable Speaker, actually the bill talks about livestock branding. The Right Brand Act is there. And one thing is, in every community, if you go to any pastoralist, every community has their own brand, but it's not registered. So I think social branding, I think you should say now registered branding. What I think is, Honorable Speaker, these days we have got, what we call livestock identification, what we call bonuses or microchips. That this of late the government had used it as a registration system, where the animal's stomach is placed, that the police is placed in the animal's stomach. Then the animal is easily tracked. Even if they go across the borders, if the animal is tracked with a system that's been which is in place even in this country now, and even if they slaughter it or they steal it, you'll be able to track the animal, the last end of where the animal was, where the borders was moved. And I think if we can enhance that one, then we can be able to trace the selling animals. One other thing is, Honorable Speaker, we had a legal notice that was signed by His Excellency, the former President of Uhuru, legal notice number 87, and most of these things were there. It was called Livestock Development and Services. He signed it, it was adopted, but up to date it has not been implemented. So anything, as some of my colleagues said, any policies or anything concerning livestock, it is not taken care of. It is not even bothered about. But one thing is, if you look at the population, the number of people that survive and thrive on these animals, they pay their school fees, they can get their own, and they use it as, you know, source of food and even with cash. They sell the animals, they pay school fees, but it is not taken care of by any policy. There is no government that cares about it. No police that cares about it. The animals they became many, they grow on their own, they grow, they move around, they cause conflicts. Even, you know, the grazing system policies are not put in place. It's not enforced. The policies are there, the legal constitution it is there, the enforcement action is appalling. So what I think is actually what we call the stock theft is actually a booming business. It involves many people across the board. It involves some leaders, MPs, and even so many people are involved, and even the government officers. The officers, you see, animals are stolen from one section and from an area, maybe let's say Samburu, and then it's going to the Kara side, 300, 400 animals is stolen, they cannot be found. So it's actually, these things are very, you know, a long chain where people have been collected. And animals, you tell the security officers that the animals have been stolen, they take vehicles, they are never found. And they are just within the country. So I think there's a lot of neglect on that side. And therefore, one other thing I'm going to say is that under Sergei and Clause 16, Part 4, the selling of animals 6:30 to 6 to 6:30, between 6 and 6:30, actually that act is already there. If the movement permits of animals for livestock to be moved from place to place, with the case where the vendor officer says there is no movement of livestock from 6 to 7 in the morning. But of course, these animals come from far-fetched areas. They come only from Mandera, only from Turkana. And then in the past, there used to be, you know, holding grounds where these animals are offloaded. They can have, the animals can get water, the animals can get rested, and then they can again unloaded. But these days, all these the holding grounds have been taken over, and that's been taken by private users. The others have come to settlement areas. The animals have been kept on the vehicles. So I think we need to have in the bill here where animal movement system again has to be developed, where we must have a holding ground. Therefore, with those few remarks, Honourable Speaker, I beg to support.
Senator Monfire.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am happy that this bill is before us today. I'm a victim of banditry. Where I come from, away from the misconception that people know about Meru and Tharaka-Nithi, I come from the first street where we border some parts of Garissa and Tana River. Bandits struck my own village back 1964, some years before I even was born. People lost lives, people lost livestock. And that trend has been with us all through from 1964 to date. As late as 2 weeks ago, Honourable Speaker, bandits came and stole animals from one Muteri and Doko. That guy has been rendered so poor because all the animals were taken from him. So it has been an issue that we are supposed now to interrogate as a country, as a house. And Honourable Speaker, I'm happy that Honourable Charaia has brought this bill, which is supposed now to bring checks and balances to make sure that we mitigate the effects of banditry, which has rendered this country, some parts of this country, so miserable. Honourable Speaker, there's, I don't know for what reasons, 60 years down the line, as a country, we are discussing about banditry, where people are stealing animals from their brothers. A certain section of the tribe strikes another tribe and steals animals from them. And it has been a thread way back from 1960s up to date. And I've captured quite a lot of contributions from quite a number of members who have attributed this habit to so many issues, including cultural values, where if one is supposed to marry, you are supposed to go and get animals from your neighborhood so that maybe you can take that as a dowry. We have also the culture also prestige, where when you really want people to know that you have really matured, you have become man enough, you must go and steal animals from your neighbors. We also have some elements of normal lagari and the politics. Because I don't know for what reasons, Honorable Speaker, that we have been able to fight terrorism. We have been able to fight Al-Shabaab. But we have not been able to eradicate banditry. I want to congratulate the current CS Interior, Honorable Kedura Kideke, who has been up and down in quite a number of, actually he has been to so many places, more than any other CS that Kenya has ever produced. He has been very much categorical in making sure that this menace is brought to an end. But to know, Honorable Speaker, away from that, we as a country, we as a house, we need to have a resolve to make sure that this practice is brought to an end. And that's why, you know, traditionally where I come from, the way Honorable Cherahia just brought that bill that we are supposed to brand our animals, we also have that traditional way of branding animals. And the Honorable Wambua, who is my neighbor, who also happens to be my uncle, can bear me witness that we have that branding where we have an hot rod. We have an hot rod which is inserted in the fire, then you mark your animals. But of course, that one does not really have to have a much effect. I think in branding animals, where you transport animals maybe from Garissa to Kitui, then you get some permit from there, that is also going to cap some levels of impunity. Because people have taken themselves as if when you have own animals, you own everything in this world. So, Honorable Speaker, I strongly support this bill, considering that it has really reduced quite a number of us into beggars, into paupers in their own country. And for those of us who have not been able to experience mandatory, like the likes of Senator Nyutu, who lives in central Kenya, who doesn't even have what the mandatory is all about, may not even understand. If you ask people like, you know, Senator Wambua, Senator Abbas, Senator Chuto, Senator Cheptumo, we have been serious victims of mandatory, and it has reduced quite a number of us into homeless, into poverty. And I think it's the only time as a Senate now we are supposed to pronounce ourselves and make some serious regulations on the best way possible through which we can make sure that this cancerous habit is capped to the head. So, Honorable Speaker, with my submissions, I support that we must, this bill, make it sail through so that we can have some serious remedies and a strong foundation on which we are supposed now to make sure that this cancerous habit, this archaic habit is stopped once and for all. I support.
Senator Karungo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to give my submission on this bill. Mr. Speaker, allow me to be the devil's advocate today, in the sense that the bill looks very good on paper, but implementation is going to be a menace, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill is talking about livestock, and it has given a definition of livestock as cattle, camel, donkey, pig, sheep, goats, and poultry. Mr. Speaker, we are giving counties an opportunity to harass their citizens. Just imagine what will happen when a county askari come to your home and you have not branded your cows. They're going to confiscate them. What if they come and find your poultry, which you're supposed to have registered and brand them? They are not. Probably we are giving them an opportunity to harass the already harassed residents of our counties. Mr. Speaker, I was thinking, and of which this is the part whereby we give our views so that now the sponsor of the bill can see what to do. The issue should only be directed to abattoirs, the slaughterhouses, that you should never slaughter an animal or a cow without the registered or registration, either certificate of whoever is selling that vehicle. What do I mean that animal? What do I mean by that, Mr. Speaker? That before I sell my cow for slaughtering, I should first of all now at that particular time be required to register, so that there is documentation at the slaughterhouse, whereby if I want to know how many animals were slaughtered today, I go to a slaughterhouse and they can give me documentation. But we should not make it mandatory, because if I have 2 cows, maybe they are just for a cup of milk, and especially in central Kenya, let me talk about Kiambu County, that we do not have this issue of cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker. So I think we should not make it mandatory. Let's make it voluntary. If you own cows and you want to protect them, go register yours. If you feel you are in an area whereby you're going to lose your cow for whatever reasons, you register that particular moment. Now, Mr. Speaker, when the county registers your animals, what other services are they giving you? Why are we telling them to register? For what reason? Are they helping you in fighting banditry? Are they helping you to protect theft? So why are we telling them just register? We're supposed to tell the county, I'm giving you my money to register my cows. Help me protect them. By doing what? We're in an era of technology, Mr. Speaker. If you have 1,000 cattle, you can use GPS tracking, Mr. Speaker. County provide that to several cows randomly, so that when they are stolen, they will easily be tracked, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, something else that requires to be done is education, because we need to change the mindset of our people. Cattle rustling was there between the Kikuyus and the Maasais in the 1800s and the beginning of 1900s. But it ended, Mr. Speaker. We need to do a research why it ended, Mr. Speaker. Instead of reinventing the wheel, my grandfather used to tell us they had to encourage intermarriages between the two communities. And probably it works. I'm not suggesting that now, but if it worked, it can work again in those communities that are doing whatever they are doing, Mr. Speaker. They also encourage reserve and farming. You have to farm for your animals for them to get pasture, Mr. Speaker. So I think what we require is not necessarily a law to the farmers, a law to those who are keeping animals, Mr. Speaker. All we need to do is whoever is dealing with the animals at the slaughterhouses is the one who is supposed to be told you cannot have an animal that does not have registration. That means they will never slaughter anything that is not registered. And then at that particular time, the owner of the animal should register before they sell. But if you're not planning to sell, why do I have to register my animal? Why do I have to brand it? Why do I need it? Maybe I have only 2 cows. So I implore my good friend, Senator Chirad Gay, that what this law is requiring us to do, or counties to do, is to provide logbooks for animals. That is what it's saying, is that every animal should have a logbook, so that when you sell, there is a sale agreement, it is moving from this place to another, but it should be voluntary so that you guard your animals. It should be, you know, the burden should be left to that particular person who feels threatened. You go and register your animals, you brand them, you color them until you feel that you are protected. But if you give it to everybody, this will give an opportunity for the counties to harass people. Finally, Madam Speaker, the bill is giving, has prescribed what should be done when you're found transporting cattle without licenses. You'll be jailed for a time not exceeding 12 months. It's talking about if you're dealing with animals and you have not, you're slaughtering animals whose background you don't know, up to 20 years in jail. That is what we are supposed to be implementing, so that whoever is dealing with animals, Madam Speaker, will always want to find the background of that animal. Just like we do with vehicles, before you buy a vehicle, you have to check. We leave this burden to the slaughterhouses to be checking with the county government. Is this registered so that I deal with it? Otherwise, let's remove the burden to the owner of the animals. And with that, I think we should first of all try this in the counties where cattle rustling is prone, Madam Speaker. And I would suggest in the amendment, we remove some of these livestock like poultry, you know, because now branding, I'm trying to imagine branding a chicken. You know, I'm trying to imagine you have a chicken for about 45 days, from 1 day old chick to 45 days when Ken Chick and the others are coming to buy it. Yet the bill is talking about 30 days you should register, you know, you apply and then wait for 30 days. So, knowing how counties work, I believe we remove poultry from this category. Let's first of all deal with cattle. If it works with cattle, we introduce all the other animals. Because I have not had pig rustling, you know, I have not heard of that. So let's deal with cattle for now within the counties that are prone, or this menace is rampant, Madam Speaker. So with that, I support, we will be bringing amendment on that issue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Hezana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to support this bill on the prevention of livestock and produce theft bill 2023 by the Honorable Senator Cherargei of Nandi County, one of the most brilliant senators we have in this house. Madam Speaker, I feel that this bill will go a long way in tackling banditry, and I also like that most of it are suggestions on what should be done. I believe that we have a lot of corrections that need to be done, especially on the branding and the movement of livestock, and you know, but my problem will be with the destination of this livestock. Madam Speaker, when we talk about the northern counties where banditry is very prone, we are not talking about stealing of 2 or 3 cows. We are talking about the theft of a huge flock of livestock, especially last year we had an incident where almost 1,000 herds of cows were stolen in Samburu County and they disappeared into thin air. And Madam Speaker, I like to redirect my attention to the Kenya Meat Commission, because a lot of this livestock ends up at the Kenya Meat Commission. And they are usually the commission that is responsible for meat products, and a lot of export in huge quantities. Madam Speaker, I would like if this bill addressed particularly the movement of livestock into the Kenya Meat Commission, and that way we'll be able to tackle the origin of this livestock. We'll be able to know where they are coming from, and ensure that we don't have livestock stolen from the pastoralist communities moving into the Kenya Meat Commission, because they are dealing with a huge number of incoming livestock. Madam Speaker, I would also like to remind Senator Cherargei, my good friend, that in some of the pastoralist communities, and I believe also they have in their Kalenjin community, the traditional branding of livestock. I, for example, come from the clan of the cows that lick fire and sleep on hot metal road. That is the bravest clan of the Samburu County, and that is identified by fellow Samburus or people from Marsabit by the traditional trademark of our livestock. Because in the Samburu community, we brand our cows as per the clans. My uncle, Senator Nenegwe, also has his own brand. But my branding of traditional cows is done by a hot metal rod, and it moves from one side of the mouth down to one side of the arm. That's why they say our cows lick fire and sleep on hot metal rod. Madam Speaker, I would like to urge my colleague Senator Cherargei to ensure that this bill comes up with a way to harmonize the traditional branding with the branding that he is recommending, because that way then, you see in some areas around these pastoralist communities, people live also according to clans. You find that this clan lives on the highlands, the other one lives by the river, the other one lives on the dry parts of Samburu, and each clan lives in their own way. So if cows move from one side to another, the community is able to identify that these cows were moved from this side of the county to this side of the county. And also, if there can be a harmonization among these communities to create a positive embrace and awareness among them, such that we know how the Turkana community brands its cows, how the Pokot community brands their cows, how the Rendile and Borana community brands their cows, we are able to identify personally and individually, even before buying, that these particular cows were coming from this direction to this other direction. Madam Speaker, and to summarize that, I would also like to know if, to see this bill tackling, or rather speaking about the hefty punishments for the people that are caught in possession or transporting livestock that do not belong to them. I would like to know that these punishments are very clearly and meticulously outlined. Madam Speaker, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Senator Joe Nyoto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to support this bill that, though I have not had a lot of time to go through it, but Madam Speaker, this is a very progressive bill. I think I must start by saying so, because the problems that we have been having with stealing of livestock, and it's unfortunate that Senator Mofaya is out. He had indicated that those of us that live in areas where we do not have banditry do not encounter these problems. But Madam Speaker, stock theft is present anywhere in Kenya where people keep animals. In our place, it's even worse, Madam Speaker, because you will find these very bad people, stock thieves, getting a dairy cow from somebody's. They will slaughter even cows that are in calf, Madam Speaker. And so this is not something that affects only areas where we practice where we practice nomadism, Madam Speaker. I'm encouraged very much about the identification of these animals, although, Madam Speaker, I'm also worried. What happens to an animal that is stolen at night and slaughtered the same night? Because even if it had an identification mark, even if it was registered, then we get a problem. However, Madam Speaker, looking at the bill in other later sections, there is also registration of carcasses. And that's why I feel compelled that this is a very good bill. Because the problem that we have been having, especially in our place, is is where an animal or a group of animals, a number of animals are stolen at night, slaughtered at night, and meat transported to some areas, and the Bama market is notorious for this. But now with this bill, where, Madam Speaker, we will register even carcasses, I think it will be upon now our law enforcement officers to see to it that any carcass that is transported to all those areas, name them, City Market, Bama, that no carcass is transported to those market areas without the proper registration and documentation, because that is where we miss it out, Madam Speaker. And that we are also registering carcasses, that encourages me that this is a very good bill, Madam Speaker. I'm a little worried though because the provisions of this bill provide for registration of animals that are 6 months of age and above. Although there is a proviso somewhere near the end that the CECM will come up with ways of registering animals that are under 6 months of age. Madam Speaker, I think it would be better if you can be able to make an amendment that we get also an express way, that we do not leave it to the opinion of the CECM or member, Madam Speaker, because then the theft could shift from grown animals to animals that are under 6 months of age. And so I think Senator Cheralgei will look at that and maybe see whether he can sponsor an amendment of the same bill so that we properly cover animals that will be under 6 months of age, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, going forward to look at the punishment that is prescribed for those that steal stock, I'm very encouraged, Madam Speaker, because it is 20 years for anyone who steals an animal, and that is if they did not use violence while stealing this animal. That if they use violence, because that is where I was very much interested, what happens to people, because the media is awash with news items of people, of these bandits who go kill even women, Madam Speaker, and steal animals. And I'm very encouraged once again that such a person, once convicted, will be jailed for life, because that is what we need. We need to have sentences that can deter those that plan and execute these plans of stealing animals, especially where they steal using violence and sometimes even kill people. Madam Speaker, I did not get enough time to read this bill, the provisions of this bill, but then I think we should also embark on a very serious program of action as relating disarmament of people that have illegal firearms, Madam Speaker. Because as long as firearms continue being in the hands of people that are criminal in their minds, Madam Speaker, we will still get very many problems. And of course, you know that arresting somebody who is armed, in order for you to make them face the law, it becomes a very difficult task, Madam Speaker. And so I think generally talking about identification of animals, talking about controlled movement of animals, because again, people will want to say that I'm only moving these animals, they are my animals, I'm only moving them to a bucket, I'm only moving them for grazing to a particular place, but with marking, with control of the movement of animals, Madam Speaker, I think we shall be at a better place. And without me taking much more time, I think I support this bill, because even the sentences that Senator Cherargei proposes are punitive, not only punitive, but deterrent enough, because, Madam Speaker, every one of us would want to live in a country where if you are rearing animals, then you know that your animals are safe, that you know you as an owner is safe. Because as it is now, especially in some areas, Madam Speaker, both the animal and the owner are not safe. And the insecurity comes from ownership of these animals. And that is something that, of course, should not be happening in present-day Kenya, Madam Speaker. And with that and many other things, I support this particular bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Madam Speaker, I would I rise to support this bill by my friend Senator Cherargei, and it is a very good bill, Madam Speaker, because it is addressing an issue of rustling. Now, this rustling is not only cattle rustling, it is livestock rustling. And it is livestock rustling which does not only occur in those areas where they keep large stocks of animals. It also occurs in areas where there are people with mixed farming. People who do fishing, they also keep animals. They do farming, they also keep animals. And not in such large numbers, but Madam Speaker, they keep it in sufficient numbers to sustain and support their economic activities. Madam Speaker, these are subsistence farmers who have mixed farming. And Madam Speaker, these things happen on a daily basis. But they are not reported nationally because perhaps it is thought that the impact on the economy of those families is not that big. But Madam Speaker, I can tell you it is very devastating. It is very devastating when you lose your animals. Me, I lost some animals like chicken. I lost maybe 1,000 chicken. I could not feel it that much. But Madam Speaker, if that happened to a neighbor who was keeping, that is his or her lifetime savings, and they lose 1,000 chicken, Madam Speaker, it can be very, very devastating. Can be very devastating. But how do you put these marks which Honorable Cherargei is speaking about on chicken? Or sometimes, Madam Speaker, it would be good if there was a classification, particularly when it comes to punishment, on who should be punished and how much. Because if you take those people who are coming with guns in the northeastern and in Isiolo, in Turkana, in Pokot, and in Baringo, and Marsabit and so on, taking animals using guns, using arms, and then you want to compare them with people who are using proboxes in my area. If you just happen to graze your goats, and because the land for grazing is becoming limited by the day because the population is getting greater and big and the land size does not increase, Madam Speaker, people come with proboxes and they put the goats. A probox can carry even 20 goats and they go with it. Madam Speaker, if you want to mete out punishment of somebody who has stolen 2 goats, 3 goats, or 10 goats, with somebody who has taken 50, 100, 1,000, using a gun, and even killing the herders with guns, Madam Speaker, I think this should be differentiated. There is theft, there is animal theft and animal robbery. There is robbery with violence and there is theft of animals. And the theft should be differentiated from the robbery. I know between my community and the community, Honorable Cherargei, there is a theft of those animals almost on any other, on a daily basis. But they don't use guns, they use arrows to come and steal our cattle and go with them to the hill. And sometimes elders sit down, they talk, and some are returned. I don't know whether Honorable Cherargei would like those his people who come with those arrows to be jailed for 20 years, if that is okay. But I think theft should be differentiated from robbery. Those who kill, taking thousands and thousands of animals from people, Madam Speaker. That, I think Honorable Cherargei knows what I'm talking about, and he will consider some of these amendments which have been suggested by my colleagues before me. And, but all in all, Madam Speaker, I would like to support this, this bill. because it is dealing with an issue which is affecting very large parts of our country, where this theft or robbery of animals has become a business. Madam Speaker, it is no longer conflict between communities fighting for resources, fighting for space, for water, for grazing land. It has become a very big business. Madam Speaker, I know that there are some people in this country who are having connections with Middle East countries. They take these animals, they take them to slaughterhouses, slaughter them, and export them. That is why very large stocks of animals disappear, even in areas like Lamu, where you have the army there. And these people travel, if you see the distance they travel from the areas where they pick these animals to those areas where they are supposed to go, it is maybe 200 kilometers, 100 kilometers. How would they transport these animals and nobody is able to recover them on the way until they reach their destinations? Madam Speaker, this means that these animals don't go that far where we think they are going. They are diverted somewhere, not very far, and taken to a place where they are quickly slaughtered and they are transported outside the country. So it is a very, very serious issue, Madam Speaker, which impoverishes very large communities in our country, and it must be taken seriously so that those who involve themselves in such big crimes must be punished. But we should not also make the same punishment to petty criminals who are stealing chicken, who are stealing some 2 goats, 3 goats. Madam Speaker, those are thieves, and there are penal codes which are there in the Criminal Act which deals with such petty thieves who steal such kind of a thing. There must be a differentiation of big theft and robberies, those big criminals who rob with guns and kill people. Madam Speaker, I don't want to speak much more on this, but I want to end by supporting this and hoping that my friend will take into consideration some of the amendments recommended by my colleagues before me and have this bill passed as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mariam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the bill which brought by Senator Cheragay. The objective of the bill is very good, and the bill sorts 2 things at a go, that is security and the livestock keeping. Madam Speaker, the branding part 2, pastoralists every community has its unique branding. Maybe the bill must be clear that maybe introduce or amended branding to be the county branding, because maybe if I'm ferrying a camel from Mandera to Garissa, let it be, if somebody say, let it be seen that this is a camel from Mandera. So let it be individual specific counties. Madam Speaker, movement, part 3 of the bill. When it comes to movement of the livestock, we are nomadic and we move everywhere to look for pasture. When it comes to now permit of movement, it might be difficult for nomadic people, which are, because this is not zero grazing. Let it be specifically for the sales and Solota. But the option of looking for greener pasture is not be identified as, it do not require permit on that. Madam Speaker, the other one is offense. In part, offense is part 3, part 4. The payment offense is when you're faring, when your animals doesn't have registration of branding, there's an offense there. Maybe if we put it as the work of the county to brand all the livestock, it will go individually to the county wise. Because if you see a county, Mandera County livestock in another county, and it has not been branded as a county wise, is the county, that is the county government to be responsible for that. Madam Speaker, mine is just to support, but registered branding, because you have to specific for, I think I have already said on that, on the specific counties. Madam Speaker, on that, I support the bill and with the amendments. Thank you very much.
Senator Okenyuri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. And I want to support the legislative proposal by the Nandi warrior, Senator Samson Cherargei. I know even beyond having this legislative proposal, I would want to challenge Senator Cherargei. I know he does not fear anyone. One of these days in this house should name the cartels behind cattle rustling and, you know, all these things we've been fighting since independence, because they are with us. And I know the more I continue actually talking about this, they might come for my head. Madam Speaker, it's actually assumed that the only people who keep cattle and farm inputs in large numbers are the pastoralist communities. I come from a community that practices subsistence farming. That's the Kisii Transmara border. And we keep cattle, and the issue of stealing cattle has actually threatened our coexistence, especially between us and the Kalenjin community. That's in the Kiango area where I come from, and Magenche. Initially, we've been using traditional methods of Kisii fighters in quotes called Chinkororo, who have been following the footprints of the animals just to get to know where they have been taken to. But with the proposal of this bill, we are now embracing new technology, no longer using Chinkororo to track footprints of where the cattle went, because now there will be branding and marking. I don't know how we are going to ensure that the the subsistent people in the small compounds who are not keeping many animals, we can also get to know their information. But that would be a good step towards stopping cattle stealing and farm inputs. Madam Speaker, some of these issues are actually contributed to as a result of unemployment. So this proposal by Senator Cherargei goes a long way in addressing unemployment in this country, because we have several young people who are engaged since they lack any other source of income. So they are seeking solace in actually stealing and selling cattle. Away from these small people, Madam Speaker, we have the cartels I've actually mentioned, whom I'm actually requesting and daring Senator Cherargei to name, who are actually stealing animals in large quantity and exporting meat to different countries. I hope this legislative proposal is also going to nab such kind of people, because in this country we make so many regulations, but enforcement is a different issue altogether. The other day, sometimes I see proposal whereby You're sending a thief to catch a smaller thief. Send a thief to catch the big thief. We shouldn't want petty offenders suffer at the expense of big thieves. We know them. Several reports have been done, Madam Speaker, in the two legislative houses. Why we should actually be running away from it is a question for another day. But this is a very good legislative proposal that has been brought by the Senator for Nandi, and I know he is a man who means his word. The people of Nandi are very lucky to have such a person who speaks his mind, who is not threatened, because this legislative proposal actually threatens most of the cartels who have made our people continue being poor. This proposal is going to emancipate several people who are actually disadvantaged, and their only hope is keeping cattle or farm products. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support, and I want to say that it has come at the correct time, because, Madam Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza administration just issued fertilizer to farmers the other day. I do not expect, after farmers waiting for such a long time, their produce is going to be stolen by someone who's been sitting and watching somewhere. So, Madam Speaker, this is very timely, and this is a very good proposal. Senator Cherargei, we support you. Thank you.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support a bill by my friend Honorable Cherargei. And in fact, when it came to the Committee of Agriculture, I'm the one who chaired that day, and he was busy chairing a different meeting. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very important piece of legislation, and it will work together with other legislations. Already there is an anti-stock theft unit in the country, but it only operates as a policy, but with a policy framework, but without a law. So this law will realize that policy framework. But there is something which, in my thinking, could be added in this bill. You know that there are now modern methods of dealing, you know, with anti-stock theft. For example, if animals have a chip, because we talked of brandy, but you know some brandy, Madam Speaker, may amount to cruelty to animals. You know how, you know, burning the skin of the animal, having to pierce, you know, the ears and things like that. If you could also have a chip, you know, if we use modern technology, have a chip which could identify farmers, you know, a certain farmer and their cattle, then that will go a long way to know, even if a cow is stolen, even if it is slaughtered, it is traceable up to where it was slaughtered. It is a very serious matter, Madam Speaker. You know, in the north, people have died, you know, because of this. And even police try to stop it, have died. Even soldiers have died. And when they arrest or apprehend somebody who has stolen cattle or a team of people, ordinarily, Madam Speaker, there will be gunfire. And even the police, then when they overpower this particular person, they will execute them summarily without a trial, without arrest, and it ends up in a failing, you know, to obey the Constitution, to, you know, rights of an accused person. They do not apply in this case. So other than this legislation, how do we solve this problem? We need to engage the communities in this practice. One way of government engaging is to make sure there is development in their counties. There is a way the livestock farmers have been settled, and they are not allowed then to wander all over the place, such that there is communication in the event of an attack to, you know, to the government, and it is easy to get these people, because these are communities who are neighbors and in neighboring counties, and ordinarily it is a matter which, even by policy, even by practice, and by what the country has already been doing, we are able to strengthen this by the law. I also find the offenses, you know, in this act not matchy with the penalties which should be meted to such people, and probably then how could you rehabilitate such people to make sure that they are useful to the nation. Some of them do not come from the country. They come from neighboring countries. So how do you deal with international relations in that matter? And you have apprehended a criminal who doesn't come from this country, and that is likely to strain our relations with their neighbors. So we need to go a step further to make sure that the neighboring countries have an agreement of some nature, so that the people who come and steal, actually commit robbery with violence, are able to be dealt with accordingly. But most important, these are cultural practices, and now there is a law which has to regulate them, so that a cattle, robber knows the consequences. So there need to be communication, there need to be education to these communities, so that people are aware that now there is a new law by Senator Cheregai, which now if you proceed with this, these are the results. Otherwise, if you look at the offenses, some of them are duplicated with the penal code or found in other acts of parliament. Although this law leads the way, as we go into third reading, we could come up with suggestions to improve it much further, and especially to match it with modern technology. But having to deal with the cultural practices, I am very sure the respective senators, the respective members of parliament from these areas, if they are also engaged and they are able to talk freely to the state, they can also give solutions, so that other than having this law, which is going to bring some order and sobriety in this business of cattle rustling, there must be knowledge to people who are useful to the country. What's the role of NSIS in this, in Kenya? The intelligence should be given as to who are the dealers, and then there could be a better way of dealing with them. And when they don't follow, then the harsh law can be applied to them, they can be cracked down, and without having to lose lives on both sides. And again, unfortunately, these seem to be very well trained people. They are used to the harsh climatic conditions. So when we send our army there, or send the police there, who don't even know the geography of the area very well, it becomes very tricky. And even when the police are using helicopters, they have to fly very high, because these cattle rustlers shoot without missing, with the only bullet left. And it's a danger also to our officers. So you cannot fly so low to be able to identify or execute or stop, So there is a need to come up with a system and a law, like it has been proposed now, so that this matter can be settled once and for all. But most important, the communities have to be engaged. Their leadership has to be engaged. All these people are known. There's no community with unknown people or where they stay in Kenya. If somebody is driving 1,000 cows or cattle or sheep, 1,000 is such a huge number. It can be spotted from far, and they are driving 1,000 cows for 1,000 kilometers. Are you not going through places with a chief, through places with an SCC, through places with a county commissioner? Are you not driving this cattle through places with the police and the government system and the stock theft unit? So it means there is knowledge to the communities, and because there have been cultural practices, we also got to respect the rights of these people, and this law has tried to come up with a solution. I believe it can do better. The government has also to get serious as a matter of the policy which has been there, which is now being legislated, so that it seems, from the information I've gotten by Ageji, our friends, from those regions, you will see the smile on their face, and you know there is some information they are not telling you. Where do these people get the bullets? Where do they get the guns? How come these guns are not known, are not registered? So there is something here which has to be dealt with, so that the cultural practices are also respected, so long as they are not repugnant to justice. And again, at the same time, one of the complaints given is that government has not given education to these people, and therefore they have no other way of earning a living. Again, also, in some of the practices, getting married is a very expensive affair in terms of cows. So a young man has to go for cattle wrestling to get enough cows to come and give as a bride price. And because of the pressure of wanting to get married and to have a family and having to show and to prove that you are a man, you end up in this practice. You probably end up losing your life there, and you probably don't come back to your community, and that particular dream is lost. So I think it is a high time, while we have this good law, if we could amend it in a way to include, the use of ICT, the use of chips, so that you can be able to identify and you can be able to know even who was the person who bought from the rustlers and where they went to slaughter. And if we do that, because this is the same meat we end up with in the butcheries and in the Kenya Meat Commission and other places who slaughter animals, or even crossing across the country, what border policies and what international relations could we deal with? And I believe that really we will sit down with Honorable Cherengai, improve this law, and it will become a very big part of solution. I would like to hear the submissions of the respective senators in these particular counties, because they could be of bigger, they can do a bigger input into this, and they can tell us why this has been going on for years and years without stopping. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
Senator Seki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support this wonderful part of legislation from Senator Cherargei, which has come to in the right time to this House, and I want to really support, particularly on the objectives of this bill, where we are looking at the issues regarding promotion of security of the animals and security of the people themselves, registrations and management of livestock and by the livestock owners, and much more very objective objectives in this bill. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this is a menace that has been there in the entire country, particularly on the areas where livestock farmers, particularly the pastoralists, have realized. And this bill will definitely see the light of the day, particularly for us who are staying in areas of who are keeping animals, livestock. And I want to say that the Senator has really tried to look at very key areas that needs to be looked at. I want to support this bill, for it has looked at the areas where there is a big problem, where we see there is an issue on branding. I'm looking at it like the Senator has really looked at the branding as a problem. And I want to support that as we solve this problem of branding, particularly on going through county by county, to try to specify each and every branding according to county governments, so that according to counties, so that each and every county has its own brand, which is known, and the policy is there. And if possible, the county governments come up with another legislation through the county assemblies, and I hope the bill will give a provision where the county governments can do more legislation or legislative provisions, so that they can, make their own guidelines on how to operate in this bill. The branding issue, as my brother Senator for Kitui has put it, we want to look at how the county governments can also go ahead and do more, or even this bill can modernize the branding issue, because the area where you just try to put even marks on the animal through the skin and ear or something like that, it is good that we do a modern electronic or ICT or whatever branding part, such that now we are able to identify a cow when it's moved or even when it is still there in the farm. This is something that really this bill needs to look at. The movement of animals is a key area which this bill has also tried to focus on. I want to support this, that we are worried because we have been seeing animals being ferried from one area to another, but there is no movement, there is no way that the government or these people who are stealing these animals can be arrested. And for it to bring this bill, to pass this bill, and talked about the issue of movement of animals from one area to another, from one county to another, it is something that this bill is looking at and try to solve these problems, particularly on the vehicles that are ferrying these animals, the kind of animals, vehicles. Probably the bill needs to know, we need to understand what are kind of animals. If it's the animals live or for carcasses, what kind of vehicles do we use to ferry the animals? The bill also has talked about the area of fences, which I'm very much in support to it. And I want to possibly add on one area where possibly the senator, Senator Cherargei, can look at the area where you can add on the as a part C or part D on the areas where you. What about the carcasses? What will this bill talk about the carcasses, particularly when you are now taking the animal to the slaughterhouse? What are the procedures that we look at when we are slaughtering these animals? Because that is where also another problem is, and where that is where farmers encounter these people taking animals and kill the animals and even slaughtering and take them there. In terms of slaughterhouses, what kind of procedures or systems do we put in those slaughterhouses so that we are able to curb this problem? So I think, Madam Speaker, I want to support this bill and say that we are looking forward to get more views coming in, particularly on the areas of where there is more animals, particularly livestock farmers. So I think during public participation, I'm very sure my brother Cherargei will focus on those counties. And I want to say county of Kajiado is one of them, because we are also very much affected. Animals are being ferried from one place to another. A lot of thefts is happening day and night. And this bill is a privilege. It's a privilege bill to livestock farmers, and in our county we do support this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Okoiti Omtata.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this very, very important bill. I support the bill, and I'll make a few remarks. First of all, the title of the bill is one I would like my brother, Senator, the Venerable Senator Fernandi, to look at. It's considering the question of theft, and yet the issue we really have in this country are bigger than theft. We've got very many issues around livestock, that is that use a computer chip which would be carrying data about an animal. I would expect it to be an identifier for that animal, not just for the purpose of avoiding theft. I would want, first of all, one thing that has really hurt us in this country has been the question of genetics. management of genetics. If you are a breeder today and you want to go and buy a pedigree, it has become very difficult to be able to trace what kind of animals are available. We have also seen the problem of inbreeding that has really reduced the size and health of our animals. With this kind of bill, if somebody had data, I could be able to guide and say, if you are buying this heifer, avoid heifer, this kind of, you can be able to look at the data of the animal and it will tell you how to manage it. We are also looking at the question of vaccinations. You can be able to look at a chip of if it's real, which will be readable. You can know whether it has been vaccinated, and things like those can be carried on board. I also want to know exactly how the database will be managed. As you have seen from the Senator for Kajiado, he has said the question of butcheries. How would they be handled? It's important that maybe we have got handheld devices into which the database about these animals can be downloaded in real time. And maybe when somebody arrives with an animal at a butcher or somewhere, when you go to buy an animal on the market, that handheld device can help you identify this animal, know who owns it, where it's coming from, and stuff like that. I feel that the branding should become part of the extension services that are offered by the counties for purposes of standardization. Let the animals be branded by counties, not by individual farmers. We find a way where the county can brand, give you the codes, standardize all that. But it's a very, very important development because there's been a lot of damage to skins and hides through branding. If you go through Maasai land today, they are very beautiful animals. But all of them have got, the ears have been chopped off, the backs have been scratched. So you look at the beauty of the animal has been interfered with just to try and help identify it. So they do a lot of cruel things to animals, which this kind of discrete identifier would help. So branding of these animals should be more than the way we do when we put a chip on a vehicle to trace a vehicle. It should not just be for traceability and identification, to the traceability to the owner. It should go more into the modern uses of animals, the modern controls, and also we can use it to penetrate markets, to show that our animals are clean, how they've been handled, the kind of vaccination they've gone through. We can then be able to penetrate the European market through being able to demonstrate that this particular animal has come through this kind of, it was born here, it has come through this kind of management. If we are talking of organic, we can demonstrate it's organic from the kind of information it carries in the chip. So this is a bill that's long overdue. It's also a bill that tells us that people in this country are still thinking. Because you get sometimes a point where you feel this country people don't think. But I'm very happy that my brother from Nandi is thinking. He has brought us very, very good bill here that will help us grow. In terms of cattle rustling, I think we have to look at the crime. It is heavily mischaracterized. It is robbery with violence. But it's passed off as a cultural event which does not attract the kind of sanctions it should attract from the state. So if we could characterize these things in a proper way and allow the police to deal with this as the crime of robbery with violence, I'm sure it will be able to disappear. But if we continue handling it with kid gloves, it's a cultural activity, it will never die. It must be called by its name. It's robbery with violence, and robbery with violence in the penal code attracts major sanctions. So these people of so-called cattle rustling needs to be given its correct name, should be called by its name so that it can be dealt with accordingly. And so this bill here for me has come at a very, very timely time, important time. I'll pray that my brother and the rest of us give it the time and attention it requires. We pour over it with the toothpick to fix it and make sure that it's able to serve this country going forward. We need to be able to register our breeds. We have the Boran today. The Boran is not benefiting us as much as it's benefiting other people who took the genetics from here are going to develop them. But because I've got a proper record-keeping system, they are able to get the premium out of this kind of animals. And so for me, nothing could be more important in terms of breeding, in terms of animal farms. And also, you saw the other day, I saw a picture of the president and some fellows talking about digital IDs for human beings. Before we put chips into human beings, let us begin by putting them in animals and see how we can manage them before you inject anything in my part of my body to get a digital ID. So this would be a very good thing to begin trying and then running databases, and then we'll be able to know how this thing works. And so tomorrow when we say we should put a computer chip in the Senator for Nandi, then we can know that when we put a computer chip in the Senator for Nandi, we have got our own reasons for doing that, and it's safe and it's whatever, it's acceptable. So I fully endorse it. As for cruelty to animals, the branding has been very, very cruel. Those hot iron bars are very, very cruel. And so I hope that this thing will be passed to the spirit it deserves, and that the country will rally behind it and grant it the resources it requires, and we begin dealing like people who are living in the 21st century. People who are competing with the rest of the people. People want to go to build homes on the moon and on the planet Mars, not just people who are busy fighting jiggers in their legs. With those few remarks, I thank the Senator for Nandi for having brought us this very, very empowering and enlightening bill, and I pray that we pass it and make it law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Ogola.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support from the onset the courageous bill by the courageous Senator of Nandi, the young, brilliant lawyer, Senator Cherargei. Honorable Speaker, the Prevention of Livestock and Produce Theft Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 12 of 2023, is a very, very progressive bill. Honorable Speaker, cattle remain the symbol of prosperity, the symbol of security, the symbol of pride, and the symbol of wealth of so many of our families in our many communities. Madam Speaker, sometimes back in my community where I come from, the number of cattle a family had demonstrated or showed that indeed they were a wealthy family, and they then took seats at the table of pride in my community. And this can be demonstrated, Madam Speaker, the symbol of pride can be demonstrated by even now, so many years after modernization and education has come in my community. Whenever we have a funeral, Madam Speaker, and I'm not afraid of saying how proud or how wealthy that community is, of family is in my ethnic community, is demonstrated by the number of cattle that we provide as we celebrate the last rites at burial ceremonies. Madam Speaker, however, Madam Speaker, just to also demonstrate that cattle has been a sign of wealth, there are a number of families that still pride in the fact that cattle or their livestock is informal banks for them. And Madam Speaker, this is demonstrated at the time when even schools open. For people who may not have cash, but they have livestock, then they are very comfortable because their children will go to school even when they are not formally employed. Madam Speaker, I'm happy with this bill because it refers to the bill as prevention. A number of us only look at cure, but this bill is out to prevent a number of ills that are in this sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are a number of people who also, it is alleged back in our communities, that they run butcheries, they sell beef and such like, but people do not see them owning any cattle for that matter. So that points out that this sector has a number of ills, and these are the kind of ills that this bill is going to solve, Madam Speaker. And that points to the robbery, the stealing of cattle, Madam Speaker. In some of our areas, there are people who move in pro boxes, as had been insinuated by Senior Senator, Senator Uhuru, and they pick cattle, whether goats, rams, and I do not know how even bulls are able to fit in those pro boxes. But Madam Speaker, this bill spells out a way in which this will be prevented. Madam Speaker, the only thing I want to state is that in looking at the movement of livestock, there must be decency, Madam Speaker, in some of our local markets. And because probably the traders are not able to afford more advanced movement of the cattle, you find the cattle still are transported, or their movements are facilitated. They go physically from market to market in very long distances. And Madam Speaker, I think this must be addressed, because it also shows a sign of ill treatment for the livestock. Madam Speaker, I'm happy that this bill spells out the role of county governments in the prevention of livestock and the produce of the same. And Madam Speaker, this will only also give some income to the counties because of the number of roles that the county government is going to play. But Madam Speaker, as these roles are taken by the county government must also enhance the services of extension officers to this sector in order to improve also the production of the right quantities and the right quality. So Madam Speaker, I support this bill, not only that it will prevent some of the ills, but Madam Speaker, it will also add to the quality and the quantity in terms of the livestock and the produce that comes from the livestock. Madam Speaker, to address the issue of theft, I think, Madam Speaker, these are organized enterprises. There are people who benefit from the stealing of livestock in this country. And that has been demonstrated by the previous speakers, because how else, Madam Speaker, would we have thousands and thousands of livestock moving from one region to another without the culprits being apprehended? So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill because it's going to restore the prosperity, the pride, and the security of our communities. And Madam Speaker, it is also going to address the criminality that is involved in this sector. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana Bi Speaker kwa kunipa nafasi hii na mimi kuchangia mawazo yangu kuhusu sheria hii ambayo
Bwana Senator Cherargei anataka kuileta hapa bungeni. Speaker, mambo mengi yamesemwa na sitarejelea, lakini kuna jambo moja ambalo ningependa kulisema kwa ufupi. Shida kubwa ya wizi wa mifugo ambao tumekuwa tukingangana nayo tangu uhuru alivyosema Mheshimiwa William Cheptumo ni kwamba ni utamaduni mbaya. Kuna tamaduni nzuri za Kiafrika na kuna tamaduni mbaya za Kiafrika. Na hii sheria ambayo Mheshimiwa Cherargei ameileta inaongelea mambo mengi mazuri, lakini kuna kitu kimoja ambacho ningependa Mheshimiwa aende akifikirie na pengine aiongeze katika mawazo ambayo ameandika kutoka kwa waheshimiwa wote waliongea. Sisi tumekuwa na kitu kizungu anaita FGM katika female genital mutilation ambayo ilikuwa inafanyika katika makabila ya Kiafrika ambayo mengine yapo hapa Kenya. Na Speaker, vita dhidi ya hizi tamaduni chafu, tamaduni mbaya zimeweza ushindi umeweza kupatikana kutokana na civic education. So Madam Speaker, ningemuomba Mheshimiwa Cherargei aangalie section mpya katika hii sheria kuhusu civic education. Watu wetu wakaliwe, wafundishwe, waambiwe mambo haya ya kuiba si mazuri, na waambiwe hii sheria itakushika vile vile ambavyo inafanywa kwa upande wa kukeketa wanawake. Kumewekwa mpaka bodi, Bwana Speaker, Madam Speaker, kumewekwa mpaka bodi ambayo inahusika. Kumewekwa hasa watu ambao wanatembea, kumewekwa champions ambao wanaongelea kuhusu ukeketaji. Ningependa hii sheria nayo itengeneze bodi, itengeneze champions katika counties ambao wataweza kutembea haswa kwa zile sehemu gatuzi ambazo ziko na hii shida. Watu wawekwe chini, watu waelezewe kwamba utamaduni huu haufai kwa miaka hii ambayo tuko nayo. Mbali na hizi mambo mazuri ambazo wamesema, lazima tugeuze akili ya wananchi wetu. Tusipofanya namna hiyo, Bwana Speaker, tutawafunga watu wangapi Bwana Speaker? Tutawafunga wa vijana wetu wote, badala waende shule tutakuwa tunawafunga. Pili, watu waelezewe na hawa watu ambao tunazungumza, hawa civic educators, ya kwamba mambo ya kuweka mahari ya ndoa, ya kuwa ng'ombe nyingi, mbuzi nyingi ambayo inasababisha wizi, Bwana Speaker, iwekwe sheria ya kusema katika sehemu hii isipite ng'ombe 10, katika sehemu hii isipite ng'ombe 3, isipite kuku 4. Bwana Speaker, tulete watoto wetu waoane, watu wasiende kuiba ng'ombe ati kwa sababu wanataka kuoa. Watu wapewe nafasi. Kwa hivyo hii sheria lazima iangalie ile shida, na shida ni kwamba kuna mambo ya tamaduni mbaya, na hizi tamaduni hatuwezi kuzimaliza na sheria peke yake. Lazima tuwaelimishe watu, tuwabadilishe akili zao, na tuweke mifano ya vile mambo yangefanywa katika counties. Watu waandikishwe, Bwana Speaker, ya kwamba kaunti hii mzee akiitisha ng'ombe 100 akamatwe, akiitisha mbuzi 50 akamatwe. Watu waanze kujua ya kwamba kuweka mahari ya juu inaleta mambo ya wizi wa ng'ombe na mbuzi, kwa sababu hizi ndizo shida ambazo tunajaribu kuzitatua, Bwana Speaker. wasichana wetu hawa wache waende bwana, ikifika miaka wache waende, hata ukikaa nao wataibiwa tu, wataenda, watazalishwa. Kwa hivyo tusiweke mahari ya juu, kila kaunti iweke mahari ya kutosha kidogo kwa kila kaunti, watu wasiingizwe moyo wa kuiba, kwa sababu vijana wataiba. Bwana Spika, kama mimi nataka kuoa Bwana Spika na nimempenda, na yule mzee ananiambia ni lazima nitoe ng'ombe 300, nimesikia kama South Sudan ng'ombe 300, Bwana Spika, na msena nampenda, nitaiba ng'ombe mimi hata kama kuna sheria ya Cherargei. So ndio tunasema afadhali pia Cherargei angalie katika hii sheria, aweke maneno ya kusema katika kila county, zile mahari zikuwe standardized, tusipate shida ya vijana wetu kufungwa kwa ajili ya mambo kama haya. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi nimetoa tu hilo wazo, mheshimiwa angalie vile anaweza kuikarabati hii sheria, ili tuangalie namna ya kuwaelimisha watu wetu watoke kwa tabia potofu, waingie katika miaka ambayo tunaishi. Asante Bwana Spika, na ninaunga mkono.
Senator Eddie Okech.
Madam Speaker, I thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to contribute a few thoughts on this fantastic bill by Senator of Nandi, Senator Cherargei. I hope that he did not bring this motion just for the sake of trying to help, people who are affected by cattle rustling, but I hope that he himself is also a farmer, because he has been talking too much about being a lawyer, and he might forget that farming has been very important. So today we can establish that Senator Cherargei is indeed a farmer more than being a lawyer. But that said, Madam Speaker, I must also say that cattle rustling has been with us for a long time. There used to be times that cattle rustling was seen essentially as a means of wealth transfer, and in some areas it was accommodated. But within our borders today, Madam Speaker, we must say that indeed it has become a menace that is very, very serious. It's now causing loss of lives. Now, if somebody owns cattle in this country, Madam Speaker, and I see it not only in the areas around the North Rift or in the Sahel region, but even from where I come from in Migori County, if you look at the communities of Kuria and the community of Rutos, particularly those who are of the Abasuba region called the Suna, in Suna West and Kuria West, this has been an ongoing confrontation around cattle rustling, whereby people have now moved from a mere form of wealth exchange to a form of now serious crime. And this is something that must be addressed, because, Madam Speaker, if you look at what is happening now, it looks like owning a cattle has become a serious threat to life. It is dangerous to own any cattle, because if you own any cattle, it means that you can be attacked at your home, you can be maimed, and you can be killed for just owning a cattle when somebody comes to pick it. So indeed, this is a very, very great bill that I think that this House should support and be able to deal with the issue of cattle rustling. But Madam Speaker, I think that there is also a sense with which this bill, I think, can be improved, because Senator Cherargei, through Madam Speaker, I must say that we must not be tempted to sometimes, institutionalize crime, because if we propose, for instance, in clause 4 that talks about branding of livestock, and it's an elaborate process, Madam Speaker, we are basically encouraging people of bad manners who are actually just criminals who are going to take people's animal without realizing that this is a crime. Because if you make it so difficult for a farmer to actually hold cattle, because I'm looking at this idea of branding, Madam Speaker, I find it a little bit elaborate and very, very detailed. I mean, it's a great idea, but in terms of implementation, one, it can be very expensive.
And number two, it can also be difficult for some farmers to be able to actually follow it to the latter, because people like those who come from where Chiragei comes from, they are very serious farmers. These are not people who hold some 2 or 10 cattle. These are people who can hold like 100 to 500 cattle. So I'm imagining if you were to hold 100 to 500 cattle and you are supposed to brand the entire herd. However conspicuous as I think is proposed in clause 4. However conspicuous this can be, I think, Madam Speaker, can be very tedious. Also considering that the reason why people hold their cattle is a means of wealth or asset keeping. So that at any given time when people want to take their kids to school, when they have got emergencies, when they want to build homes in these particular communities, they can see them very fast sell the animal. So I'm wondering if somebody, for instance, in Migori County, who comes from Muriri constituency, wants to go to a rear market, which is just at the border of Mutembei and Migori County, Madam Speaker, wants to sell their cattle, and then they've gone with it to the market. So what happens when somebody from Mutembei in Mbita constituency or Mbiwa constituency, especially where Senator Beatrice comes from, they like buying cattle from this particular market called the RIA, and they go with it all the way to Kaboch. What happens if you now put an infrastructure whereby, however conspicuous it is, you brand this animal again, and then before you realize, the next day it will be in Kindu Bay, and then I want to sell to somebody from Nyakach, which is now in Kisumu constituency. Then again, now that the cattle has gone to Kisumu, it has to be rebranded. I think the branding element can be rethought, and this is where I will help the Senator of Nandi think about some economical ways of doing this rebranding proposal. It's a good one to be able to trace, register animals, and on all this, but we should not make it expensive and also difficult for farmers, considering that some of these farmers are also rudimentary. They have got zebu animals that they are keeping that are not proper, and sometimes the improved breeds like the Saiwal, or even the most prominent breeds like Fresian. So we still have these zebus that are very many in our communities that sometimes branding can be a very difficult thing to do. So that is something I think that as a lot of improvement that can be done, Senator Chiragei. And then the second thing is just the idea around policing. I think we can improve the idea around policing, because this policing system must be embedded within the grassroots community. When you think about things like Nyumba Kumi initiative that have been there, I'm looking at livestock as a critical component of agriculture, and agriculture has been devolved. And because it has been devolved, part 2 is really dedicated to look at the functionality and the role of the cabinet secretary. And you look at it, the coordination and the development of intergovernmental relations in terms of mechanism to deliver services, as well as the movement of cattle that is in the part 3 of this particular bill, and especially clause 12 that talks about the movement of cattle, Madam Speaker. I think this is whereby we can be able to be more innovative and take the genius of devolution and look at how can devolution really help us to police and monitor the movement of cattle. I feel like this bill tends to take some of these functions, or makes it possible for the cabinet secretary at the national level to almost take control over this function. I think if you look at it critically, the only element that this can be able to help with is the element of security, because security is not devolved. And because security is not devolved, that we can rethink some model of engineering a local community policing and mechanism and monitoring mechanism of this movement, other than giving the national government this particular function that at the end of the day does not become as effective as if this particular function of policing system or monitoring system of security could be put within counties and be able to empower counties to do. I think if you have those two,
then the essence of offenses that has been articulated by Senator Cherargei on the offenses in part 4, I think clause 16, 17, and 18, they are brilliant offenses that have been articulated there, that then end up talking very seriously about criminalizing the element of cattle rustling and basically thuggery of stealing people's animal. But I think it will be effective if you combine this with the local policing system, local monitoring system, other than taking this function more pronounced, in a more pronounced way to agriculture communities at the national level. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say also that as I finish, there sometimes need to be a time when us as a country, we are called to solve the root causes of problems. And I really like what Senator Mungatana has talked about, the element of extreme poverty and economic emptiness among our communities that has always forced young people to find other ways of survival and other modes of survival. And some of these are criminal activities. It is important that as a people and as a house, we can be able to constantly emphasize that the activities that constitute cattle rustling are just as criminal activities as any other criminal activities within our country. Because if we emphasize on that, then I will be very proud to support this bill so that the offenses that has been articulated, especially in part 4 of this particular bill, and I'm looking at clause 18, 4, subsection 4, you know, that gives very serious charges on people who have committed some offenses, that they should be taken very seriously and be punished very seriously when you are found to having done these criminal activities. But before we even get there, it is important that the Senator of Nandi also is able to encourage the government of the day to just think about critically investing in the economic modes of local communities. You know, we saw the other day when fertilizer was hugely subsidized in the concept of subsidizing production, but we did not see any farm inputs that were subsidized in the same fashion in the livestock department. Mr. Speaker, you can actually see that as important as the State of Nandi has emphasized on the role that livestock plays in agriculture, there is need to subsidize agricultural feeds for animals, so that people who are rearing these animals are not faced with challenges like we have seen conflicts around pasture, people fighting over pasture. And now it has also even caused what we will call wildlife versus the pastoralist conflict. In places like Kitui, you see that kind of conflict coming because there is no subsidy around this feed for animal. So in as much as we want to invest in only crop-based agriculture, the government must also start looking at how do you invest in animal-based agriculture so that you suppress the pressure that some of these communities have, that they want to supplement by some activities of thuggery and going to steal some people's animal because theirs have died, or go and steal some people's animal because they don't have the capabilities of producing their own fodder. This is very, very important. But otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I want to really congratulate my brother and now the farmer, the prolific farmer the Senator of Nandi, for bringing this bill, and I hope that it can be more objective so that we can be able to revisit it, so that when it comes to subsequent readings, we can be able to explore some areas that we can be able to tighten and make cattle rustling history in the borders of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support the bill with amendments that will be moved forward together with Senator Cherargei.
Senator Cherargei, the House had earlier agreed that at 5:30 we would adjourn to discuss a matter of national importance that was moved by Senator Mungatana. I think 2 minutes is not enough for you to reply. You can start replying tomorrow. Yeah. So at this time, no, we will do it tomorrow. Senators, I call upon Senator Mungatana to move his matter of national importance.
So, Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to move this motion, which you gave notice of. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to Standing Order 37, the Senate do now adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the prevailing heavy rain and subsequent flooding in many parts of the country. Mr. Speaker, we have experienced lately extreme Mr. Speaker, this rainfall in various parts of the country, especially the highlands, has resulted in flooding, Mr. Speaker, of the lowlands in our country. Mr. Speaker, those that have been badly affected amongst those areas are the coastal areas in this country. Mr. Speaker, statistics that have been given to us state that at least 80,000 households have been affected in the coast, and specifically in Tana River County, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, at least 20,000 households have been affected. Mr. Speaker, farms have been submerged because of the waters that are coming down. Homes have been submerged, Mr. Speaker, because of the waters that are coming down. Animals have been swept away, Mr. Speaker, because of the waters that are coming down. Mr. Speaker, schools, hospitals, areas of common amenities like churches, mosques, none of these places have been spared, Mr. Speaker. Our people have lost a lot of life in the last few days of the continuous heavy rains that have hit the nation. Mr. Speaker, we want in particular to thank various county governments that have taken effort to try and do what they can within their capacities. And I want to mention that counties in the northern part of Kenya, they have experienced also extremely heavy rains. And Mr. Speaker, we have seen county governments that have come out to do what they can, and they have managed to do the little they can within their resources. And we want to congratulate those county governments that planned in advance for these events. Mr. Speaker, I want to single out my own county where advanced planning was done, and because of that, Mr. Speaker, a lot of lives have been saved, and the response has been good. so far. Mr. Speaker, in Tana River County, there is a normal flooding. And Mr. Speaker, the floods that come from the river, nobody complains about those because that is part of the riverine ecosystem where we expect the river to flood for part of the time, and then when the water recedes, Mr. Speaker, people are able to plant and harvest their crops. And this has been a traditional way of farming, where we wait for the flooding of the river that brings in alluvial soils from up in the highlands, and we are able to deal with the farming downstream. Mr. Speaker, this is not what is happening at this time, because at this time, Mr. Speaker, the amounts of waters that have come are too heavy. And right now, Mr. Speaker, initially, the weatherman had said it's excessive rain. Later on, he apologized to Kenyans and said that it is not excessive rains, but it is in fact El Nino. Mr. Speaker, what we are calling upon the national government to do is to intensify efforts to rescue people in various places. We know that food, water, medication has been sent to some of our counties, including Tana River County. But Mr. Speaker, there are specific issues that are affecting certain wards. And Mr. Speaker, I will name Wayu Ward, Mr. Speaker, in Tana River, Kone and Asa, Mr. Speaker, parts of Gariseni Central Ward and areas in the north called Pamba, where the roads have been cut off, Mr. Speaker. There's no supplies that are going to those areas. And Mr. Speaker, because of that, in Kone and Asa, in fact, Mr. Speaker, there was a crime that was committed. People fought, somebody died, and the police cannot evacuate the body to do the normal processings because rivers have been, the roads have disconnected the way to those areas. Mr. Speaker, people are suffering. And one of the things that we want to ask the national government to do, which the county government is not capable of doing, is to provide helicopters to those areas that have been cut out. Mr. Speaker, you will find that in the northern areas, army helicopters have been supplying food to areas that have been cut off. We have seen the minister going to those areas, and yet right here, Mr. Speaker, inside Tana River County, which is a neighbor in the northern, we have not been able to receive the kind of support that is required. Mr. Speaker, we are therefore using the floor of this House to ask the national government, number one, to double the efforts in supplying foodstuffs, in supplying shelter, temporary shelter, medicines, and to supply water, fresh water, to various people who have been affected by these floods. Mr. Speaker, secondly, Mr. Speaker, we want choppers to be deployed to various places, in particular Kone and Asa, Wayu Ward, Mr. Speaker, where there has been any form of support, Mr. Speaker. And our people in those areas actually are facing real threat of starvation because the only roads that are going to those places are now completely inaccessible. We are asking, Mr. Speaker, that the government, using this floor of the House, to beef up security for the people who have been able to relocate from the lower Tana Basin to higher areas. Because where they have gone, Mr. Speaker, these are new areas. Mr. Speaker, if those people can be given security where they are settling, because now they are sleeping outside, they are not in their homes, they are not where they are used to be. Mr. Speaker, we pray for security to be beefed up for where they are. in the new areas. Mr. Speaker, we are also asking the national government to create a special program, what I will call, loosely called the Marshall Program, for the northeastern and the coastal area where we have been affected badly by these floods. We are calling upon the national government to put money, Mr. Speaker, for rehabilitation of the infrastructure, the roads, the schools. Mr. Speaker, we are going to go behind like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We are asking, Mr. Speaker, that money be made available by the national government to allow for rehabilitation of these places. Mr. Speaker, I finally want to ask the national government, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, that we need a plan, Mr. Speaker. It is a shame that after 4 months from all this supply.
Senator, you had 10 minutes to move, so I think your time is up. If you could ask 1 minute and then your seconder.
So, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that it will be a shame for the national government 4 months from today to come and say that there is drought, there is no water available in those areas. Mr. Speaker, we are asking for the national government to make arrangements, serious arrangement to create water catchment areas in these places so that this water does not get wasted, all of it. And even after this, Mr. Speaker, a plan must come, and the plan must not be around just the river Tana, because that one has its own ecosystems. We are talking about all these rivers that are seasonal, these rivers that are coming from Kilimambogo, and these rivers that are coming from the mountain areas, to have a system of damming and preserving this water for our animals, for our irrigation, and not to let it go to waste as it is. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and invite Honorable Senator Eddy to second this motion. I thank you.
Senator Eddy, and you have 5 minutes to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my brother, Senator Mungatana, for trusting me to share in his zeal for an intervention on this, what is now becoming a national crisis, actually. In fact, I thought it would have been bold enough to say that this thing should be declared a national crisis, Mr. Speaker, because if you cast your eyes on any news, on televisions, and listen to any news in our radio stations, Mr. Speaker, the country is in disarray with these serious rains. You know, if you look at the coastal region, Mr. Speaker, what has been the bastion for tourism, where people go and bask in the sun, and people walk anywhere they want, you would see, Mr. Speaker, that in the coast, it has become floods everywhere. In fact, I'm thinking that the senator for Kirinyaga would even think that the coastal region has become a place for growing rice, and he might end up confusing that place for growing rice. And Mr. Speaker, this is not only problem in that area alone. Even if you go to a place like Migori County, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, the people from Kabuto are experiencing serious floods, and these floods have caused serious havoc to their livelihood. It is difficult now, Mr. Speaker, to think about even going to get food from the supermarkets and even food from the local markets, Mr. Speaker. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, people cannot even think about proper planning for planting seasons that we have at this time when we're approaching December. Usually people of Kabuto are very industrious people. People of Nyatike sub-county are very, very strong, and they like planning, they like planting on time, and this is really affecting them. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would really encourage that the national government should see this as a serious national crisis. But I also think that, Mr. Speaker, this crisis hasn't caught up with us unknowingly. We know very well that a few months ago, around April and March, Mr. Speaker, we are the Met Department telling the country and cautioning us that we need to have a serious disaster readiness and preparedness that will be in good capacity, Mr. Speaker, to be able to help the nation evade any kind of heavy rains that were akin to El Nino at that time. And this El Nino, Mr. Speaker, I think that even if this is not the magnitude that we expect of El Nino, it is still destructive enough to make it difficult for the country. But we also do know as a House that there are resources that had already been dedicated, one by respective county governments, and we saw a number of counties coming out very strongly and saying that they had put resources. Nairobi, for instance, there are investment in boats, there are investments in drainage, and increasing the service levels of the roads in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, as well as Mombasa, Mr. Speaker. And right now, there's no any county governor that is willing to talk about those resources. I think that the Senate should rise above any other leadership in the country, Mr. Speaker, and question where these resources have gone to. If resources have been put in place to deal with floods, to deal with serious issues of emergencies, and those monies are nowhere to help people now, where did they go to? We must question, we must summon governors, we must visit the counties that are affected by floods and ask where these resources are being deployed to help the people. And in the same manner, we must hold the national government accountable for billions of money that were put to be able to deal with floods, to be able to complement those that the county government had put in place. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion. It's a very serious motion, and I hope that people can not only just contribute to it, but perhaps in the subsequent motion that we are going to have.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cherargei. Oh, one moment, Cherargei. I propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 37, the Senate do adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the prevailing heavy rain and subsequent flooding in many parts of the country. Senator Cherargei. Yes, Senator Ogola. What is your point of order?
Honorable Speaker, I rise on point of order 41 on quorum during the proceeding of the Senate. Do we have the quorum, Honorable Speaker?
Clerk, can we confirm quorum? Let us ring the bell for 5 minutes.
Can we ring the bell again for another 5 minutes?
Honorable Senators, having failed to attain quorum at the expiry of 10 minutes, the House stands adjourned pursuant to Standing Order 41-2A until tomorrow, Wednesday, 22nd November 2023 at 9:30 a.m.